Good morning and welcome to the Minnehaha Commission meeting for October 17th, 2023. I call our meeting to order and will note for the record that we have a quorum of our commissioners present. Commissioner Bender is absent today. I'm Dean Karski. I'm the vice chair and I'll be chairing today's meeting. Before I get started, I'd like everybody to avoid embarrassment, silence your cell phones. And then if you're going to speak today, there's a sign-in at the back corner over there. If you would, if you would sign in if you're going to be speaking today, we'd appreciate that so we have your name for the record. I'm going to ask everybody to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'm going to look for a motion from the commission to approve our agenda.
Move approval?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Our consent agenda, this is kind of our routine business part of the commission agenda. If there's anybody who'd like to comment on anything on our consent agenda, we can take that right now. Please, sir, come forward. And this is nothing to do with our regular business, just our consent agenda. Good morning. What's your name, sir?
Good morning, Commissioners. Chet Ellsworth, Rapid City. I rise to request a removal of item number 2 from the consent agenda to put on the regular business agenda today and to declare an emergency.
I need a motion from one of the commissioners to make that.
So move.
Second?
Motion and a second to approve our consent agenda without item number 2 on it. That your motion, Commissioner Benega?
That's it.
All righty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, so then from our consent agenda, we will look for, we have comments on our commission meeting minutes for our consent agenda. So if somebody would like to make comments on that part of our agenda? It gets moved to the end of the meeting. Okay. So the minutes then will get moved to the end of the meeting. Thank you for the direction. I appreciate that. Moving on then to we've approved the consent, moving on to our regular business. First item on our regular business, which I believe most of you are here for, a public hearing for appeal of a decision by the Minnehaha County Planning Commission to approve CUP number 2351 to allow a rubble dump tree grinding operation on the property legally described as the north half of the northwest quarter, excluding H1 and R1, Section 34, T101, and R51W, Wall Lake Township. And we have Mason Steffen from our planning office here to kick it off.
Yep. Good morning, Commissioners. Mason Steffen from the County Planning Office. So yes, as explained, this item is an appeal of Conditional Use Permit 2351, which was approved by the Planning Commission at the September 25th meeting. The subject property is located at the intersection of 267th Street and 463rd Avenue, and the proposed driveway for the operation would be located approximately a half-mile east of this intersection. This permit request is an alternate location for the Mueller Pallets tree grinding operation that currently has another location pending with the County Commission that will be heard again at the November 7th meeting. The petitioner has also stated that only one of these locations is needed, so if this one were to be approved, the other permit would then be withdrawn. Just for some background information on the petitioner. As explained, this item was approved by the Planning Commission at their meeting on September 25th, 2023. At this meeting, several concerned citizens were present at the meeting and stated their concerns with this proposed location. A majority of these concerns were traffic-related concerns, as well as dust, environmental, and other health concerns. Ultimately, the Planning Commission did decide to approve this item with a unanimous vote of 6-0 with the staff recommended conditions. There has been a lot of opposition information that has been submitted for this item, and I do believe the commission has received most of that before today's meeting, so I will just go through some of the pictures here. So as I explained, this is the subject property. It's approximately 79 acres here at the intersection of 267th and 463rd, and the driveway for the operation will be this one right at the very edge of the property, on the very eastern edge of the property. So here will be the site plan that was submitted by the petitioner. So as you can see, this existing driveway will come down, and then there'll be this turnaround point here, and the tree branches and other related wood materials will be stored on the rest of the property, with employee parking being to the north. And I'll just show some pictures of the property here. So here's standing at the very north edge of the driveway, looking towards the south, where a lot of the trees and tree branches will be stored. And as you can see now, it had corn in it when I visited earlier in September. Here's looking back towards the existing landfill. So this is looking east, and about a half mile from where I'm standing would be where the landfill access, or 464th Avenue, would be. Here's looking directly across the road, showing that just directly across the road there is nothing. There are no residences directly across the road. It's just an empty field. And the nearest neighboring property that has anything developed on it would be this substation a little bit farther to the west. And then here's just looking farther to the west. And then this is looking from the substation back towards the property. So you can see a lot of those trees are screening the property. And the petitioner did say at the Planning Commission meeting that a lot of those screening trees on that side specifically will be remaining on the property. So with that, I'll go back up to the site plan, and the Minnehaha County Commission may vote to uphold, amend, or defer action on the Planning Commission's approval decision for conditional use permit 2351. And I'm available for any questions if you have them for me.
All right, from the commission, any questions of Mason? Nope. Okay. So we do have a good number of people here that are interested in this, and the way we're going to proceed with this is we'll take proponents, those that are requesting the site be approved first. So proponents first, and then after that we will do opponents, okay? And then after that, the proponents do have a time for a rebuttal. I'm going to ask that we keep repetition of previous comments to a minimum, just in the interest of time, for everybody's sake. Otherwise, you might be cutting into somebody's time that could want to bring up a new item that you haven't addressed. So, with that being said, I will ask for the proponents of Mueller Pallets to come up to address the commission.
Good morning. My name is Margie Muller. I am the owner of Mueller Pallets. I understand that there is a lot of opposition to this endeavor that we have going, but I will assure you that in all of our 43 years, I've never had a complaint from any resident or anything in the area. I've never had any issue with a conditional use. I work closely with Homeland Security. We have an open door policy to Homeland Security. I've been on Crime Stoppers. So anyways, in relation to this woodyard, I think it's a win-win. I think it's in the perfect location. I know that their lawyer had sent us a thing on certain conditions that they want followed. There was one part with trees on the north side. We have purchased the property, so putting trees on that north side of this property would not enable the farmer to get into his field. So anyways, his access point is going to be that property. But anyways, I really hope that you approve this. It's a win-win for our landfill. And currently we are recycling a football field 101 feet deep per year. That is not just this location, obviously, but we have 80 sites within 3 states that we do grind in. So anyways, I think you guys all received a packet from my lawyer, Paul Cheddar, with different landfills and things like that. So if you have any questions, I am here.
Thank you, Ms. Muller. Any questions of Ms. Muller? All righty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Paul Cheddar from the Boyce Law Firm on behalf of the applicant. This is at least the third time before this body that this business endeavor has appeared since summertime in June. So you're familiar generally with the operation. I won't delve into those details. I want to speak to this site. But I would reference, as Mason alluded to, there is a pending conditional use permit for another site that was heard previously, which is half a mile to the east. This site is preferred for a lot of reasons, and one of them is because we heard from the neighbors. We heard concerns that were raised back at the first planning meeting back in April, and it caused us to continue to look for a more ideal location for this operation. There were positives with the Pine Knoll site half a mile to the east, but we heard the traffic concerns. We heard from the neighborhood that was in close proximity, and we've found a site that we think solves some of those issues to a large degree. As was contained in my letter to you on Friday, a couple of things I want to highlight. The applicant has a track record both in Minnehaha County and Lincoln County of having conditional use permits and not having problems with compliance, not having issues with complaints from neighbors, including in Minnehaha County being located within a half a mile or closer to homes that were being constructed on Cherry Lake. So some of those concerns, I think the track record of the applicant speaks for itself. On the issue of traffic, I hope someone's here to speak to this more specifically from the Highway Department, but we've been told that the traffic concerns here west of the landfill entrance at 464 are different than the entrance that was going to be located east of 464 because of the traffic counts. And as I submitted to you on Friday, the applicant undertook the expense of its own traffic count to get an idea of what we were talking about in terms of traffic volumes, and it's half of the traffic essentially in round numbers west of the landfill entrance as opposed to east of the landfill entrance. And based upon that difference in traffic count, we understand that the county highway superintendent's position on whether or not a traffic study is necessary explains the difference in that analysis. In terms of the complaints or the concerns that you'll hear from potential neighbors, there's two short affidavits in the information submitted on Friday. The first is from a Don Hoffman. Don has operated and farmed adjacent to the Lincoln County Muller Pallet site for decades, and is, as attested to in his affidavit, the existence of the wood grinding operation did not impact the yields of his crops, and he did not have any concerns with respect to his operation. The second short affidavit is from a neighbor about 3/4 of a mile to the southwest of the previous site in Lincoln County. And her short affidavit, she indicates that she never had concerns with dust or noise given the operations of the applicant in close proximity to her home. So I'm not minimizing the concerns that the potential neighbors have, but the experience of other homeowners who have lived in close proximity, I think, should provide guidance to the county commission. With that stated, I would endorse one alteration to the conditions that were accepted by the Planning Commission last month. Through dialogue with the planning staff on an issue raised by counsel for some of the opponents, it appears that a solid waste permit may be required, and we're comfortable with you adding the condition that the applicant will obtain any and all required permits. So if it's determined that, yes, in fact, we need a solid waste permit, we'll get it. If it's determined that the state of South Dakota requires us to get some permit, we'll get it. If the federal government requires a permit, we'll get it. We're comfortable standing before you and accepting an additional condition that we'll get any and all required permits. And as Margie mentioned, the track record of the applicant is that they comply with the permits that are required. There's not an instance in which Minnehaha County or Lincoln County can identify an instance in which we've not complied with conditional use permits in the past. With all that said, I'm happy to answer questions now. I'll certainly listen carefully to the other folks' comments, and we'll be prepared to speak to those at the conclusion of this matter later this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Cheddar. Any questions? Jen?
Chairman, thank you. I'm not sure if this is a question for Mr. Cheddar or Ms. Mueller. I'm just curious if you can help me understand why this location is the best location for the tree grinding facility. I know you focused on another area right in the same stretch, and I'm just curious if you can help me understand why this area out of, I think your previous location was in Lincoln County.
Correct, yep.
And so, just with the amount of opposition, I'm curious what other locations you've looked at. If you could tell me a little bit more about that process, how many other properties you examined and why those were ruled out and why this was determined to be the best.
Sure. Well, in any instance, it requires a willing seller or a willing landlord. There was a commercial realtor, Brian Smith, who testified at several of the public hearings since April and testified as to the dozen or more, I think I understand it closer to 18 or 20 locations that were reviewed and analyzed over the course of the last year, because the shutdown of the Lincoln County site was known that it was coming from about a year ago because of a death in the family of the previous landlord. So the search for a site has been ongoing. This site is great for a number of reasons. It's on a hard surface road. It's in close proximity to the landfill, so you've got traffic of people that are used to going that direction, bringing their wood waste to the applicant's location. And that it's in close proximity to where a lot of our customers or suppliers of wood are operating. As Sioux Falls grows south and west, it's builders, it's developers that are taking down trees, that have wood scraps from homes that they're building, that are then delivering the product to Mueller pallets. So as we looked at sites, the preference was south and west of Sioux Falls because of the proximity of our suppliers, and then also much of the wood that's ground at this location amongst the 80 goes to the Poet ethanol plant at Chancellor. So this location is particularly advantageous from that perspective in that the Wall Lake Oil Road, which is half a mile west of this proposed site, is almost a straight shot, subject to an S-curve, down to Chancellor. So from that perspective, it's also an ideal location. And there's going to be, if we put this anywhere else, there's going to be people that are negatively impacted. As I'm sure you've experienced in being on the county commission, that whatever is proposed, somebody doesn't think it should be right there. They might think it's a great business, as you'll probably hear. I think everyone universally thinks this is a great business. Margie is a great business owner. They're great community members. You'll hear all of those things. They just don't want it here. And that's probably the type of testimony you'd hear wherever it was put in Minnehaha County.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any others? All righty.
Thank you.
Any other proponents for this public hearing? Okay. At this point, and just for clarity's sake, and Mason, where'd you go? Has the other request that was to the east of this location been pulled totally? Is that still on the table? Can you make sure everybody understands that we have two separate?
Yes. So it is two separate items, and the one to the east has not been withdrawn as of now. So that one would still be heard at the November 7th meeting. And then it's contingent on this one, on if the other one would go forward. So it's the petitioner's plan that if this one were to be approved, then they would withdraw the other one, but otherwise they would move forward with the other one to get that one approved if this one is denied or deferred past the November 7th meeting. So that one has not been withdrawn as of today.
Okay, thank you for that.
Chairman.
Commissioner Benega?
Excuse me. Mason, do you know how long the landfill's been there? And I know it's been expanded multiple times, but when was the original one built?
I believe the first conditional use permit for a landfill on that property was from 1975.
Okay.
And then in 1995, it was expanded the first time. And then in 2001, I believe, is the last conditional use permit.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bleinberg?
I'm not sure if this is a question for you, Mason, but when, if I understand the process correctly, if this were approved, the applicant would still have to get an access permit from highway, is that correct?
That might be a better question for highway, but typically, yes. Even if there's an existing access, they will require an access permit for improvement of the access, even for an existing access.
Okay, and would that include things, I know, sorry, this is probably out of your scope, but would that include things like the width of the entrance and the grade and the surface and things like that? Oh, Jacob.
Great opportunity to bring up someone from the highway department. Welcome,
Thank you,
Jacob.
Was in the overflow room watching from there. So yes, an access permit would still be required for this site. Typically, they're not usually part of the process that we're doing today.
Jacob, would you-
Usually they're done.
For the record, make sure everybody knows who you are.
Yes, sorry. Jacob Mars with the Highway Department. An access permit would still be required. They have to meet our access standards, which would be the correct surfacing, either gravel, asphalt, or concrete. The inslopes have to be correct. The culvert under the approach has to be up to date. Things along those lines.
And then, if I could ask one more question?
Please.
Do we have any projections, if this were to be approved, with the increased traffic? I know there's been briefly mentioned a left turn lane for westbound traffic going to the landfill. If we approve this, would that have any bearing on that discussion, or is that not on the table?
They're far enough apart where I don't see there being any sort of an issue between this site and the landfill site. I don't see this approach having any effect on the landfill approach.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Jacob? Thank you, sir. All righty, so we've talked to highway. Stick around, I'm sure there'll be more. At this point, we'll move into our opponents. Again, we're gonna begin. I believe there's an attorney representing some of the landowners. I've spoke to that attorney and I've asked her if she would speak first. So I'm gonna call up the attorney for 4 of the landowners and give her the opportunity to begin the opponent conversation. Good morning, identify yourself and welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Lisa Prostralo with Redstone Law Firm. I am representing 4 adjacent or surrounding landowners, including Wanda Scott, Dan Brandt, Glenn Fierstenberg, and Grant Edgecombe. I was only very recently retained to assist with this process, so I have been frantically getting up to speed with the application and the facts surrounding it. I will, up until this point, my clients have been appearing in person themselves to raise what I believe are very legitimate objections and concerns to this application. And they've not only done so with respect to the application that's before you for consideration today, but for 2 other applications that have been considered in the last 6 months. And I think that matters because ordinances in Minnehaha County require that any applications that is denied cannot be, a new site, substantially similar circumstances, can't be resubmitted within 6 months. Now, to circumvent that requirement, what appears to have happened here is the first application that was submitted, which is 2314, was ultimately abandoned by Mueller after the access permit was denied. So they abandoned it before it was denied. The second application is still pending. It has been deferred until November 7th. So every time these applications get filed, my clients who are homeowners with lives and obligations are forced to take out a significant amount of their time and effort to respond and to raise their concerns. And that is a significant burden for them. And they're here today doing this yet again. And what struck me as I was listening to their concerns is how much information seems to be missing from the analysis here. Because this commission's role is to evaluate the facts and circumstances in the application to determine what impact that's going to have on the health, safety, and welfare of the surrounding area, as well as just the general impact of the site. I don't know how that analysis can be conducted when this commission has been given no indication as to the volume of wood that's going to be ground on the site, because that is going to have a direct impact on the amount of dust, pollution, and other adverse effects on the adjacent land, and my clients in particular. And that's just one of a number of different concerns. There is also a creek on this site and a drainage issue where if we've got wood that's coming into this site and being ground up and it's been treated for emerald ash borer, for example, there are potentially contaminants that could be run off into that stream. Now, my clients are not environmental experts. I'm not an environmental expert. They're not equipped to stand before you today and give you an expert opinion on the scope of that risk. That's not their role, and it's not their burden. This is an application submitted by Mueller Pallets, and it is their burden to establish that a permit is appropriate. I don't think that they have submitted enough information for this commission to review. And as I sat with this issue and reflected on my clients' concerns, it became clear to me that something's missing from the analysis. And I think part of that is a solid waste permit. And I submitted to you my reading of the applicable ordinances, and I think it is very clear that Mueller Pallets is required to get a solid waste permit before they can get this conditional use permit. I believe that Mueller's counsel today all but conceded that they will get that permit and didn't dispute that it is required. And what I think is important is for this commission to have that application and the information that's required to support it at the same time, and before it to consider as part of this conditional use permit. Because you can't conduct the analysis by just looking at a part of the equation, which is what you're being asked to do. As part of the solid waste permitting process, you would obtain information regarding this operation. You know, what's the volume of wood to be ground? Where is this wood coming from? I would note for the commission that there's been a representation that this is going to have no effect on traffic counts, that this is not a highway traffic concern for that reason. But I want to point out that Mueller's own counsel has admitted these trucks are 5 times bigger than the semi-trucks currently servicing the landfill, 5 times bigger. This is a one-lane county road, a no passing zone area. And it's a speed limit of 55 miles per hour. These enormous semi-trucks are going to have to execute a left-hand turn onto this site. They're going to come to a complete stop, and there's a no passing. That is a very real and palatable traffic concern, and one that I think needs to be addressed as part of not only the access permit that Mueller Pallets is going to have to get, but just as part of this commission's general review. It's not something that can just be dismissed because traffic isn't going to be increased. Risk can't be evaluated unless you consider the type of traffic and the change to that type of traffic that's going to be occurring in this area. Now, in speaking with Mueller Pallets counsel, what I came to understand is that their previous site in T is now closed, as you know. I asked what is going on with the customers that were previously having their wood ground at those sites. Some of them have been stockpiling. Some of them have been diverted to another location that's now full. And I think Mueller Pallets would concede to you that there is a backup of demand that's going to have to be serviced at this new location from that prior T site, which means that those trucks are going to be increasing traffic on this site. That is a fact. It has to be, because somebody's got to grind that wood now that the T location is closed. Once that wood is ground, where does it go? Mueller Pallets has said that it's going to be further processed and sold at the Chancellor site. Well, what does that mean for Minnehaha County? That means that these enormous semi-trucks are going to be loaded up with wood and taken out onto that county road and go through to Wall Lake, on the west side of Wall Lake, onto a very small county road that has weight restrictions in certain parts of the year. Those semi-trucks will exceed that weight restriction, and so it is very likely that at least part of the year, Mueller Pallets' large semi-trucks are in fact going to have to go east past the landfill, therefore creating the same type of traffic concern that justified a traffic study in the previous application that was submitted. I think in this case it's even more justified, especially considering the size of these semi-trucks and where they're going to be diverted to continue this operation. And I want to be clear that this is not just a dump site. This is not a place where the community members are just going to take their branches and leave them. This is a wood processing facility. It is the grinding that is the concern here. And that grinding is going to have a very real and significant adverse effect that needs to be evaluated. And the problem that I have as counsel for my clients coming into this proceeding at this stage is I am not equipped and they are not equipped to fully evaluate the concerns and the risks that are associated with this application, because Mueller Pallet simply hasn't given us or you the tools to do a meaningful evaluation. And that's what we're asking the commission to require. I would ask that the decision on this permit, that it either be denied or at a minimum deferred, and that Mueller Pallet be instructed to obtain that solid waste permit and the access permit, and frankly, conduct a traffic study to take a look at what the larger impacts of this site is going to be. I think all of that information needs to be before this commission before it can make a meaningful, can conduct a meaningful review. And in closing, the last thing I would like to note is my clients, I think, have somewhat been dismissed. Their concerns have been dismissed because of the landfill's proximity to this site. And I want to put to bed any notion that the presence of this landfill in this location renders my clients' concerns invalid. The landfill is fundamentally different from the site that we're contemplating here. The landfill has a half-mile setback, a 30-foot berm. What grinding does take place on the landfill currently is limited. It does not happen more than maybe a week, a month, we would estimate. And it is not something that my clients are having to see either as a visual flaw in the landscape, so to speak, as something that kind of makes it an unattractive place to live because of those setback requirements and the berm. And it's not having an adverse impact on their lives. This site, by contrast, doesn't have a berm. If you look at the site plan that Mueller has submitted, it's quite striking that they don't even have measurements for what the tree line is going to have for a barrier. You know, they say that they might maintain that north side tree line, but they don't tell us to what extent. They've represented that they're going to be taking out a lot of the other trees that surround the site. And if that's the case, there's really no barrier here because we don't have any berm. We don't have a fence. And apparently we have no assurance that there even is going to be trees to shelter this area from the noise and the dust that's going to accumulate, and to keep this community looking attractive and a good place to live for my clients. None of that is here. The other thing I thought was striking is there's no restriction as to when and under what conditions these trees can be ground. There should at least be some type of a restriction on grinding during wind conditions, or some volume restriction on how much wood can be processed at this site. It's not this commission's role to arbitrarily come up with those limitations. We have to rely on Mueller Pallets to guide your decision, and the fact is they just haven't given you enough. So with that, I would ask the commission to deny the application outright, or at a minimum, defer this until Mueller Pallet produces additional information to substantiate their application and obtains the other permits that are in fact required. With that, I will cede the floor.
Any questions of Mr. Strollo? All righty. Thank you. All right. So we've had about 10 minutes of testimony for opposition. If anybody else would like to testify, we welcome that. If your testimony is similar to Ms. Prostrolo's, you can just say, I concur with what she said. If you have addition to it, we'd like to hear any additional comments. So please identify yourself when you come up if you don't mind. And if you haven't signed in, please do so. Thank you, sir.
Glenn Furstenberg, and I do concur with what Mr. Pestrello had said. In addition to that, I do want the commissioners to understand that Mueller's applied for this site. Again, I'm just assuming they applied for this site because they were turned down by planning and zoning for the last site. They were voted by the planning commission, which voted it down, and that's why they applied for the new site. Had they been approved over there, I'm assuming that this new site would not be an issue as of now. So I just want to make sure I set that record straight. So, I'm a resident that lives along this busy highway. And, I want to bring up 2 points. I want to bring up traffic safety, and also I want to bring up the entrance safety. So first of all, I want to talk about the roads that will be used. Do we have this thing on? I just want to set some pictures out here. Oops. I don't know how if you can see that now. You can? Okay. So recently I've taken some pictures, and the reason and I lined this up with 2 different trucks. And there was 2 reasons I used 2 trucks. One is because typically branches that would be hauled out to millers, and also dust that would be hauled out of millers would be using trucks. Similar to this, although according to Mr. Cheddar, would be like 5 times bigger. So the other reason I use trucks like this is it's similar to the size of like a school bus. So, and by the way, we do have school buses that travel down this road. We have 3 different school systems that service this road. And so I just want to make clear that we know that that's about the size. If millers were using cars to come into their site, well, then I would have taken pictures with cars. But typically, they're going to be using trucks. So I want to make sure that. So these trucks that I've used, they are actually a 96-inch wide rig. Law states that you can go a maximum of 102. So that's actually about a foot wider than these trucks. So this highway states on the surface of the highway is 24 feet wide. These trucks are 8 feet wide. So I think it was, and I did the figures, but I think it was like 252 inches is what the blacktop measures. Trucks maximum would be 204. So having to subtract those, you'd be looking at 24 inches between the trucks as they're passing each other, going side by side with a foot on the outside. And so the other thing I want commissioners to be concerned about is the steep ditches that are along this highway. And I've actually taken pictures again with, once again, this is I got it upside down again, sorry about that. This is a picture of a truck. We just had it parked just partly off the road. And as you can see, left-hand tire, yes, it's still on the ground, but you can start seeing it shift. This truck is actually empty. Had it been full of grain or anything like that, certainly with the steepness of that ditch would ultimately be catastrophic. And so then also here's another picture. Truck, again, these pictures, by the way, are taken right at Mueller's entrance. And I got it turned wrong, don't I? Sorry about that. This is right at the approach of Mueller's entrance. So again, truck is just partway down the ditch with that front wheel. This fuel tank's already dragging the ground. That's how steep that ditch is. And here's another picture I want to show. Again, so you commissioners have a good, this is a picture of, I got it right here. I keep turning it wrong, I'm sorry. As you can see, my shadow, oh gosh, give me it right here. Thank you. As you can see, my shadow, I'm taking the picture, phone's up here. I'm standing in that ditch. That's how high that truck is off the bottom of that ditch at that site. If we have icy conditions, mud being drug out from that site or any other site or any other mud that would be on the road from anybody else, and that was on this county highway, which is a 2-lane road again, if that was on that and we have vehicles stopping to make a left turn, if somebody can't get stopped, there's really nowhere for them to go. They're going to either take the ditch or they're going to have to swing out in the other lane. Either one of them is going to be catastrophic, especially if it happens to be a school bus. My concern with all of that is that, I just want to make sure that everybody knows You know, chances of me getting in an accident over there would be pretty slim because I know the dangers. Most people don't. I'm concerned about your kids. I'm concerned about everybody's kids here, grandkids, Mrs. Mueller's kids, Mr. Cheddar's kids, grandkids. They don't know this road, I'm quite sure. We live out here. We know that road. We know the dangers. And I'm asking that this be denied just for safety reasons. I just don't know what more we can put forward to you guys, guys and gals. You know, we're overly concerned with this. And again, I realize this is a very tough decision to make. I can fully respect that for you guys. But I still think that first of all, in any decision that we'd ever make, safety has to be number one. Safety, safety, safety. I think as our representatives, council people, and all that, safety should be number one. Everything else is below that. It seems like, and I think I can speak for almost everybody, we're all talking about safety. And most of it's not safety for us, it's safety for people we don't even know. It's safety that we care enough about other people to keep them safe. And I'm not saying the opposition's only concern is profit, but it just seems like they just want to, have a business set up there to take income from the landfill, because that's what they want to do. They want to compete with the landfill. And having said that, why are we putting two like properties in the same area that service the same kind of material? Landfill takes wood product, these guys want to take wood product. During any kind of a natural disaster, can you imagine how many trucks are going to be out there? Mueller Pallets is stating that their driveway is going to be a quarter mile. I take that back. It was like 150 feet. I take it back. The full length was quarter mile. 150 feet. A semi is 75 foot. They're 75 feet long. That means only 2 semis are going to get in that driveway to unload at a time. During the rest are going to park out in the road. I know planning and zoning has set a stipulation that there will be no parking on the road, but who's going to enforce that? Muellers have no way to enforce that because they're not part of the county. They're a private business. We just have to put the math together and realize this is the actual picture. I can appreciate that, that they've not had any complaints. I'm going to take their word for it, that's probably true. But they're not out here. At their other site, maybe they didn't have any complaints. And by the way, that other site is still for sale. They can do whatever they want to buy it and move on there. If they didn't have any complaints, that sounds like a perfect spot. Out here, we don't know if there's going to be complaints. And I can assure you that if something catastrophic happens, there'll be complaints, and there's going to be plenty of blame to go around. It'll take so in a way, I'm kind of looking out for them too, because if something happens, we know the dangers. If something happens, it's going to be catastrophic, and all that good reputation that they've got is going to be washed down the drain. And so I just want the council to, you people to understand all this.
Thank you, Mr. Furstenberg.
Yep, thank you, that's all.
Okay, appreciate it.
Good morning, Grant Edgecombe, 26685 Day Spring Circle, and I am signed in. Thank you for allowing us to be heard. And the only reason that I'm able to be here today is because of what Jesus has done in my life. He's given me victory over fear. I'm kind of nervous now, but a fear that's been in my life my whole life. Okay, so according to the county's traffic count in August 2013, which Jacob has helped me understand, there's 4,683 vehicles. So I'm going to give you some of the facts and some of the numbers, and I'm going to talk about traffic. This is a one-day snapshot of a whole year. And so it could be higher, could be lower, could be different numbers. But I took and multiplied that figure out, and it's 1.46 million vehicles on 267th. just using the county's numbers. And in the 1990 revised zoning ordinance, it states, these regulations are designed to carry out the goals and objective of the plan, but to lessen congestion on the county streets. My opinion is, as I read it, I think it violates that ordinance. Therefore, I don't believe it should be allowed, just based on that one point. Adding more traffic and tree damage traffic, it only increases it. It never decreases it. It always increases it. And as Sioux Falls is growing to 500,000, it's just going to be even more. And now a regional, it's just going to be from everywhere. We're going to get assaulted from everywhere. The 1.46 million adds a lot of stress to the people that use this road, that live along this road, including engine exhaust, engine noise. There's no studies done on the noise levels, the decibel levels. I think there is a study on speeds, and Jacob might be able to tell you. I don't remember. I only remember the high one, which was 101, was the highest speed they recorded on that road. And I'm going to probably say it's one of the Suzuki 10,000 RPM motorcycles heading out to the park. So it doesn't decrease, it increases traffic. And I'm just wondering how much more traffic, how much more safety concerns is this road going to have to cause to us? How much more are we going to have to endure? One, we must have stressed out one of the other board members, because with raised voice, he says to us, "What do you people want?" But it ends up, it's a valid question, and I'm going to ask that of you. What do you want for us? What do you want for our community? It's doubling up on a process that's already there. A vote yes means you do want this for us, and 1.46 million vehicles and an increase. But we're hoping that you want what's best for us as our representatives, what's best for our community. We believe this is a processing facility. It's labeled ag land, but as we heard, supplies are coming in from non-ag places. They're being hauled to this location and not being raised or grown or harvested on this. We've never been opposed to real agricultural, like planting and growing or harvesting corn, beans, wheat, oats, raising cattle, something that's actually grown on the ag land. But because this is a processing plant where others are supplying them, the city of Sioux Falls, the parks, different businesses, they're not ag, they're coming from the city. And I don't think they're being zoned as ag. We've never opposed agricultural. We have no complaints, no issues, no opposition. We've even supported a pump and pack that was a beneficial addition to our community. They have been a fine, outstanding, good neighbor. Our community has been classified as a good neighbor according to some who previously testified during the first 3 attempts, because we're dealing with this 267th Street traffic. Other concerns, health, safety, others are going to address those if we can. Noise pollution from traffic or stress from noise, which is PTSD type stresses. Fire, being surrounded by cornfields. Pollution, tree debris on the roadway. And this is the climax of our concern, and Glenn kind of touched it. Wood, it's a clean wood site only. But as he revealed, and our researchers have discovered, from trees are harvested from residential properties. And a lot of the trees are trying to be saved with 4 different types of chemicals that combat ash borer. These chemicals can stay inside and throughout the tree for up to 7 years. How do you identify this type of chemical treatment in them? Pallets have been in confinement areas to keep spills contained and sitting in those same chemicals until cleaned up, definitely contaminating the pallets. Wondering if the pallets and trees will be analyzed chemically or just visibly, like I've watched at the 85th 4th Street North location. That was the inspection. I watched different vehicles do it that way, and then they drove off. I propose this be done with otherwise they could be receiving contaminated wood. Exposure can happen through ingestion or the mouth, eyes, breathing, lungs, skin, and I'm wondering if they will have a dust recovery system like Poet has when they dump their loads. And it's required at Poet, I guess. What their dust recovery will be. And I hate to say this, but I think of Camp Lejeune, and Glenn touched on it he didn't say the word litigation, but that's what's happening with Camp Lejeune. Somebody didn't do some things right, and there's a huge litigation with it. The other thoughts, so I'm suggesting that you deny this permit, just outright. It's not a fit, it's not a good neighbor, it's not the perfect location, it's duplicate, and I don't mean to duplicate, but here's something that it is to us. It's an expense. It's expense to the county with increased traffic and pressure on the roads. Our township has sent letters. They're maxed out, and everybody's got limited supply of money, except the city. The electric substation will incur extra maintenance cost for cleaning. I don't know if there's somebody here today, but if they have concerns, they can tell us their own. So for travelers, residents, vacationers, there's windshields damaged from rocks and debris coming off the trucks and being thrown up from the mud in the rocks. There's tire repairs from nails from the pallets. Sidewall damage from debris, and then you need to replace a tire. There's headlights damaged from rocks and debris. And so I'm seeing a pattern of expenses for everybody else, but only profits for Mueller's. So and it's the fact that in the 2035 Envision plan, which I just found out about a little while ago, they're trying to keep you guys are trying to keep the corridors to Sioux Falls attractive. And they've even admitted this is not attractive. So I suggest you deny. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edgecombe. You did a great job. All righty. So far, we've heard about health, safety, welfare, the volume of wood, a lot about traffic, solid waste permit, more about traffic, the type of wood, dust recovery. So if you would like to speak some more, we've heard a lot about that. So please, if you have something new to add, we welcome you. Good morning.
Good morning. Chet Hofer, 26662 465th Avenue. Okay. I want to talk about fire. Now, we've been told that they don't have any fires, but this shows the truth. We've been led to believe a lot of things that are not true through this whole factor. The fire department that services this area is a volunteer fire department from Hartford. And just looking back at the landfill that had the fire here, weeks ago, Hartford was called. Hartford has to fill their trucks with water. They tried to suck it out to Wall Lake, and it didn't work. And I suspect that the uphill, being the lake is lower, that they couldn't get a good pump coming, getting the water up. So they had to drive all the way to Sioux Falls and hook up to a hydrant to fill their truck. That's a lot of time. When a volunteer gets called first, they have to leave their jobs, go to the fire department, and then this fiasco here. There's a lot of time involved. And if this fire would start in the fall when everything is dry, cornfields around there, and a wind, boy, where could that go? So also, if an employee of Muller gets hurt, or a motorist gets hurt out by the drive with a truck trying to turn in or waiting to get to turn in, and he gets rear-ended or whatever, the ambulance comes out of Humboldt, not Hartford. Here again, it's a volunteer service, and I know from experience, it was over 45 minutes to get to my home. So that should be an issue also. This property, this site, and I'm told by the farmer who's been farming it for many years that this site drains toward Cherry Creek. Cherry Creek is an overflow from Wall Lake. A snow thaw in the spring or a hard rain, it comes into Cherry Creek. Cherry Creek goes and winds up in Family Park. Then it goes into Skunk Creek, Sioux River, Missouri River, Mississippi River. So the chemicals that they use to treat the ash borer trees, or the chemicals that they use to treat the pallets that come from overseas, so that the bugs and everything else doesn't get in there, that's not good. And we're gonna have to apparently live with that. You know, I'm gonna let you guys off easy. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hofer. All righty. Other opposition? Morning.
Morning. My name is Leanne Krenz. I live at 26756 463rd Avenue, and I agree with all the information that's previously been said.
I missed your name, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Leanne Krenz.
Okay, thank you.
We are the farmers that farm the ground around them. Presently, the north little patch, the east and west, we take and lease from the owners of the land and from the city dump. And we butt up on the south side, and we've been farming that ground since 1908. So we've been in this area for over 100 years, so we know what goes on around here and everything. And the, let's see here, a lot of stuff that they've said they've already addressed in mine, so I just want to propose that, just to the traffic, when we were going, my husband was going down 41st Street with the combine, right by this area right here, and it was like 10:30 on a Tuesday morning, which is usually pretty normal when we get to our fields. He was met by 2 garbage trucks, a city dump truck, a side dump truck, and 8 cars, which had to pull over for them to get by, and was very close quarters. And there is a lot of machinery that does take and go on that road. Each year, South Dakota is, agriculture is being loose to these types of situations, and once the ground is developed, it's gone forever. We're never going to get it back. And I always thought South Dakota was a state that was going to try to preserve agricultural ground. Another thing is, farming is a big risk and a big gamble. We have very little control over things that make our operation work. You do the best with the hand that you're dealt with. They're taking approximately 7 acres from us right now. But what's gonna happen in the future if they decide they need to expand and they take more acres from us? You know, these acres are our lifeline to survive. Whoops, sorry. And then by them taking more agriculture away and agriculture, that's why so many smaller farms are starting to diminish, because things like this happen where they're finally just cutting away, till they no longer can survive, and then they have to quit. So those are my concerns. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Brandt, and I've signed in. I share with all the objections and concerns of the neighbors and friends. I'm here to address more in detail on the dust. Dust in this location, in this operation, produces a byproduct that is very fine dust, a 1/30th of an inch, or the width of a human hair, and is referred to as particulate matter, or PM. PM is known to cause a person's risk for heart disease, stroke, lung cancer. This will gather in our yards and be recycled and breathed in when we mow our yards, when our children play and run in the outdoors. How much dust will be produced? I was able to watch a similar grinder, if I could have this put on, in operation at the landfill, in action. A large tree trunk was being ground. The fine dust produced at the input began billowing upward. As the amount of dust gathered and it increased and rose higher in the sky, it created a cloud, was caught in the air current, and started traveling north. It was high above any tree line and appeared to be a white cloud in the sky, not the dust cloud that it truly is. The wind was 8 miles an hour on that day, and this cloud was formed, and it moved in less than 10 minutes. Millers will be grinding 10 hours a day, and if you want to say that the landfill also grinds, I would point out that their hours are just occasional day here and a day there, not 10 hours a day over and over. The dust particles of 10 microns will travel over half a mile in a breeze of 3 miles an hour. There are neighbors within a half a mile from this site and 2 large communities, Countryville Estates and Wall Lake, within 1 mile. The wind in Minnehaha County predominantly is from the south for 6.7 months of the year between May and November, not from the north, as stated by Mr. Cheddar in previous meetings. May through November is when people are out working and enjoying their yards, and families are using Wall Lake and the park there. The dust will reach them in a 10-mile-an-hour wind. The average wind speed in South Dakota is 19.7 miles an hour. These facts are supported by SDSU's Mesonet, a collection of professional weather stations with closer spacing and more frequent reporting. Mesonet is used by the National Weather Service and researchers. Here is a picture of a dust cloud created at Mueller's previous site. This is a faraway one just to kind of show that there are no clouds in the sky. And here's a blown up version of it. The dust cloud has traveled over the airport runway at the T location, as you can see here. And we've been told that the T airport has had to call and ask Muellers to stop grinding as the dust was interfering with the planes landing and taking off. As Muellers have stated, this site will be an eyesore. And here's a picture of their T location. And as you can see, the height of the wood, because there's a grinder in the back, There's a tractor off to the side to kind of give you an idea of the height of the piles of wood. It's not something you'd want you'd want in your neighborhood. Zoning said we don't go, zoning has mentioned that they don't go out unless someone complains. You can always call, and this is what they told us, you can always call and complain, but if we get too many calls, we will only ignore them as it's too much work to go and investigate. In conclusion, we know this is a difficult decision for you, and we thank you for your efforts to do due diligence. I do not know Mrs. Mueller personally and have nothing against her. Her grinding business serves a need in the community. However, this sort of business needs a very specific location. I strongly believe the sites along 41st Street are inappropriate. The road is too busy and would create a risk to the 4,600 vehicles traveling this road each day. It removes acres from agriculture production and puts many other acres at risk for production. There's no benefit to Minnehaha County. Please deny this permit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, Diane Runge. I am the one that got the packets to you. So I'm just gonna kind of gloss over all the cancers that you can get from wood dust. And so also on one of the pages, I have listed all the websites that I've gotten this information from. Cancer.com, some of the government agencies that are where I got my figures from. So wood is an essential part of our modern life, but it can also be dangerous. So wood dust is considered a Group 1 carcinogen. And in the fire from Canada's that we had come down, they also have that carcinogen. So when the fires were coming all the way from Canada down here, we were asked to not stay out for long periods of times, not to work out. And if you had any health conditions, you were not supposed to go outside. They did that like 4 times, and that was from a fire that was in Canada. And so just having them next to us, we're gonna have to live with that every day of, can we go outside? Will someone have an asthma attack? Over the years that they're gonna be there, are people, I mean, you can even get leukemia. I mean, it is a never-ending list of the cancers that you can get. And the picture that was shown there, that the wood grinder, that is Mueller's, and it was in Madison when it caught fire like that. We are a very high populated area, and so just to have the effect of everybody there, I'm not sure why they don't go and get land out by their main consumer. There is hardly anybody out there, and I'm sure Poet has their a business one, and so it would fit in perfectly by them and not a lot of residentials. We are a residential and agriculture community, and we'd like to keep it that way. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Amy Johnson. I live at 46306 266th Street, which is directly a mile north of the proposed site. I'll keep it really brief. I agree with everything that my neighbors have said, so I won't touch on that. I had emailed to Mason, and hopefully that got passed on to you, signatures of people that live in the area who are opposed to this. These are signatures from all of the people that live in the immediate area of this proposed site. It's not a change.org petition. We took paper out, and I'm sorry, could I use this? When I sent that email, there were 175 signatures. Someone turned a sheet in to me today So I did do an updated count. And I would just like the commission to know that that is over 191 people that have signed in opposition of this. Sorry. This is just scanned into my phone. All people that live within the area. I just ask that you take that into consideration. That is a large number of people. Those signatures were collected under a 2-week period. And I just ask that you take that into consideration when making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for opposition?
I also just have a quick point. Marilyn Cooley, 26680 Day Spring Circle. And, you know, we've lived there for several years now. When we moved out there, we understood there was a landfill there, and we accepted that. We even understand the landfill may expand, but we really never expected that there would be a second dump there. I have heard the argument that, well, there's already a dump there. What difference does it make? What better perfect place could there be than to just, you know, it's just like expanding that? And well, my response to that is it's bad enough that we have one dump without adding to that. So I appreciate your listening, and I agree with all the other folks that have been up here speaking also. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'm not seeing anybody else jumping up. Okay. If anybody else wants to speak, please be ready.
Collie Volness, 46, 163, 267th Street. I want to talk about the substation. It was just briefly mentioned. I talked to an electrical engineer this weekend, just by chance met him, and I told him, so we've seen the overhead views of the dust, right? So he said, for one, cleaning of the electrical substation, he said, it happens, it's Mother Nature. Well, this won't be a Mother Nature. The cleaning will be because of the dust. And he said, it gets on the conductors. They have to shut the plant down to clean the conductors. So how often would they be doing that compared to what Mother Nature would make them do? I mean, to me, it's an electrical substation, and we had a picture. It's right across the road. I mean, it is the closest thing to it. So one of my other questions to the person was, if Mueller Pallets was there first, would that substation say, this is a good place to put our substation? He's like, no. Well, they're there first. Now Mueller's coming in, and they are going to cause problems with the cleaning of their conductors. How often? And I asked about, would it be a hazard, safety reasons, fire possibly, sparks? The whole substation is fenced in. It's all crushed rock, and there's probably a 20-foot buffer outside of that whole chain link fence. That's all crushed rock. And then the perimeter has pine trees around it that are just recently planted. But I think the substation is something to really, really consider. Any questions?
Thank you, Gully. All right.
Hi, I am Representative Bethany Soy. I live in Minnehaha County, and I represent District 9, which is the area that this is proposed in. And I won't repeat too much of what has been said, but I would just thank the commission for being very gracious in their time and allowing everyone to speak. And I would just ask that at least a pause be put on this at this time, because as we've seen, there are a lot of safety concerns, environmental concerns that just haven't been addressed yet. So I would ask the commission not take final action at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody from the overflow room? All right, so I'm going to close the opponent testimony at this point, and we are going to give the applicant the opportunity to rebut anything or to answer any questions that may have been posed if they would like to. Mr. Cheddar, welcome back.
Thank you very much. There were a lot of comments made, and I can't possibly respond to everything this morning, but want to answer questions that those comments may have prompted you to have. But a couple of quick things. As early as June, we started reaching out to some of the people you've heard from today, asking for their input and having a conversation. The first time we received any response to multiple requests for that engagement was this morning from Lisa. And I appreciate her involvement. It's helpful to have lawyers involved. But there's been a lost opportunity here. But all you've heard from all of these voices, they just didn't take us up on the opportunity to talk through and explain and answer some of these questions. For example, the photo of the grinding at the landfill, it's steam from a large wet tree that's being ground through that process. It's the heat of the grinding generating steam. It's not smoke, it's not dust, it's steam in the process. I think the cloud that you saw over the interstate and the airport at T, I can tell you that the applicant has never received a call from the T airport. The T airport never contacted Lincoln County Planning and Zoning. There's an email in your letter from me last week from Lincoln County at Toby Brown saying they never received any concerns from anybody in Lincoln County with respect to that conditional use permit. As mentioned earlier, we'll obtain all of the required permits, the access permit, approach permit from the county, a solid waste permit if that's required. Any of those things that are required of the applicant, they will obtain. In terms of the south wind, the nearest residence is approximately a mile away. I don't think that there will be an impact from dust that might be caused. I think the affidavit from Pam Fogelman in my packet from Friday addresses that issue. And a lot of the concerns that are being raised will have the opportunity as Sioux Falls grows and the landfill explores expansion. This conditional use permit sunsets in 10 years. In some ways, that's a long time, but in other ways, it's going to be here in no time. And so there's an opportunity for the applicant to come back then as this road usage changes and further development takes place in that part of Minnehaha County. Certainly, the joint jurisdictional area by that point in time was probably going to be creeping into this neighborhood. There'll be a review process at that point in time before the applicant can continue operating. All of the criteria have been satisfied under the county's conditional use permits criteria. I trust the county staff and I implore you to do the same. They analyze these issues. They analyze the 6 criteria as to whether or not a conditional use permit is appropriate. Please trust in your staff from the planning perspective, trust in your staff from the traffic perspective. Those voices are voices that tackle applications and proposed projects on a daily and weekly basis and provide an objective analysis of what makes sense for the county. You can fall back on the recommendations and the advice that you're getting from your planning staff and your traffic and highway department. With that being said, if you do have other questions, I'm happy to answer them. With respect to the substation, they were among the landowners in proximity that received a mailer from us under the conditional use permit requirements. So the electrical provider is aware of this project, and we've not received any contact from them. With that said, I'll close my comments and answer any questions that you might have this morning. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chair, one question. Mr. Cheddar, I seem to recall at the Planning Commission level, we did a comparison of some distance from this grinding operation to any residences and from the existing landfill grinding operation and any residences, and it was fairly comparable from what I recall. Do you recall those numbers, or could you give my colleagues that information?
Absolutely. There was, at that time, I think Brian Smith, the commercial realtor who was involved, spoke to that issue. And the current location of the wood grinding equipment in the Minnehaha or Sioux Falls Regional Landfill is approximately a half mile from the nearest residence. That same distance is being honored with this proposed site. So we're in no closer proximity to the closest residence with the proposed site to the applicant than is currently wood grinding taking place by Minnehaha County, or the landfill. And I would add that, as we've maintained since April in our hearings, our grinding operation takes place at this site 5 to 8 days a month. So we're not there every day. As Margie mentioned, we have different locations. Our equipment is mobile. So we're only at this site operating the grinder a small fraction of the month. We do have it's fully staffed whenever we're open. We have employees there accepting deliveries. But for the vast majority of any given month, there's no grinding, no noise, no dust other than the unloading of wood products that would be similar to other ag type uses that are in the vicinity.
Commissioner Benega.
Mr. Cheddar, the hours of a business, those 5 to 8 days that you're using to operate, are those going to change from your current site to this site?
No, I think that'll be consistent. It probably, in fairness, is going to take some time to get to an equilibrium where we're sort of back to operating in a normal state. As I discussed with Lisa Pastrallo yesterday, we believe there probably is some pent-up demand of deliveries from some of our suppliers. So in the first several weeks of operation, we may be there more days in any 30-day period. But once it's up and running over a period of time, I'm told that 6 to 9 days a month is what's anticipated based upon our experience at the Lincoln County site.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bleinberg.
On the site plan, there's the large area labeled wood. Can you define what that means for me? It's currently where the grove of trees exists, I think.
Yeah, some of that western grove of trees is intended to remain. My clients have been on the site conducting some due diligence here in the recent week or two to evaluate that. But there's benefits to the applicant to maintain a windbreak there. So I anticipate some of those trees will remain. It will be sorted in a way. There will be trees that are dropped off in a pile, one or more piles. There will be pallets that are dropped off in one or more piles. And then there'll be times in which there's ground wood product that's ready for delivery to our customers that will be in one or more piles, taking up that teal space. Does that answer your question, please?
I guess I was looking for a little bit more specific size of tree area that would remain. If I understand you correctly, it may be some trees are left to the west.
Correct.
But not sure how much or how many feet or any.
I'm not sure if the health of some of those trees has been evaluated to know what can remain and what can't remain. But it's our intent to maintain a windbreak where there's current trees because that's beneficial to our operation and courteous to the neighbors as well.
Sure. It is an older tree grove, I think, so I'm not sure how many feet of width you would need to maintain for a windbreak.
Sure.
But
Henry, have you had a chance to review that? Yeah. A quarter of it being removed possibly, so a majority of it being maintained.
okay, thank you.
Other commission questions of the proponent? Any other proponent testimony?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, I'm going to close public testimony then, and I'm going to turn it over to the commission to ask questions of staff and/or of anybody that may have testified. Commissioner Benega.
I have a question for Mason, if you have a second. Even if you don't, you have to answer. Have you talked to the city at all about the long-range plan after the 10 years of this CUP, so to speak? Are they going to develop other locations, landfills, in different quadrants of the community? Because obviously this one's been there for 48 years. Mm-hmm. So is the intent to continue to expand, or don't they even have a plan at this point?
They did just renew, so the city is required to have a solid waste permit that has a 5-year renewal, and they were just renewed last year. And I'll go up to the location map here so we can kind of see it. So there's land, approximately 80 acres right here that's owned by the city, and in that solid waste that solid waste permit for them, that was labeled as buffer/future expansion. So I do think the city's plan is to keep farmland in this area as buffer for now, and then I believe they have stated that the current footprint of the landfill can last for another 30 to 40 years, and then at that point would be when they would have to look at expanding at this site.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Mason?
I'm not sure if this is a Mason question either, maybe. As the Stu metro area continues to grow population-wise, do we have any data on the increase in traffic that's already occurring on that road, maybe annually, just because the landfill is the only landfill, I think, that serves that whole region, right, that area?
Yes, that might be a better question for Jacob if he's still here. I don't know what the annual increase in traffic is, but I do know that in talking to Steve Groen, the highway superintendent, he did say that the highway department is comfortable not requiring a traffic study on this due to the 10-year sunset. So if the traffic conditions were to change significantly in that 10 years, we could revisit it. But at this point, they don't anticipate this project being an issue with traffic, is what Steve explained.
Jacob, did you have anything you want to add?
Over the last couple of years, traffic has been kind of funny with COVID. A lot of people stayed home. So our traffic counts aren't super consistent from 2020, 2021. I can tell you the traffic counts we did this year at the Wall Lake Oil, County Highway 151, we had 1,455 cars average on a day. And then over on old South Dakota 17 or County Highway 145, it was 3,228 cars a day. So there's a significant difference to the east versus to the west where the operation is proposed to be. And to just put it in perspective, there's another grinding operation on County Highway 125 northwest of the Veterans Cemetery. That area has between 2,300 and 2,800 cars a day. And over the last 3 years, there's been one run off the road accident. Someone, single vehicle leaving the roadway, ended up in the ditch. The cause really wasn't identified, but that is the most common accident we have in the county. This section of roadway is very similar to that section of roadway. They both meet what our county standards are for roadway sections. So,
If I may, do you mind?
Go ahead.
Do we have a standard that our roads are built to for traffic volume on a day?
we do, yeah. So
what do we expect or anticipate?
we don't have, I'd have to go back and look at the project development manual that we have, but in general, all of our county highways are built to the same standard. I want to say it's 12-foot lane, 2 foot, at least a 2 foot shoulder. And then on township roads where we have structures, those are narrower.
What about volume?
Volume-wise, volume really doesn't factor into the size of road we have because the most cars we have on our roads is somewhere around 10,000 cars a day, and a two-lane road is sufficient for the type of traffic that we have out here.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner?
Just a follow-up question about the traffic count. Do you remember when the most recent numbers were gathered? And the reason I'm asking is because I know with the 41st Street construction that it's probably lower than normal just because of the headache that is. So if you can avoid it to the north or south, people are more likely to do that.
Sure, and I would say that the most recent traffic study we had was early summer this year. And it was higher than traffic counts that we've had in the past, but only incrementally so, a couple of % higher than what we've seen in 2020, 2021, 22, 23. So I believe it's accurate, what we have today.
Okay, even considering that construction, because I know personally if I'm heading into town, I avoid that area.
Even considering the construction, it's been consistent. One other item that was brought up, if you don't mind, was the no passing zone at this location. When we look at permits, we look at intersection sight distance safety. So it's a different criteria than is considered for no passing zone. In no passing zones, you have two vehicles headed at each other at the same speed, at an intersection, one is stopped, one is moving. So there's different criteria, and this approach is in a good location for intersection sight distance.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up a little bit, Jacob, mentioned that volume, maybe for certain considerations, volume of traffic doesn't matter, but just as for a 2-lane road, but certain busy intersections or a left-hand turn would be another criteria you'd look at that. And I guess by point of comparison, we had an issue before us that's now been deferred into November, but we were looking at a new entry point just east of the entry point to the landfill, and that was going to require a traffic study because of the volume of traffic and a left-hand turn there. There were enough features there that you did want a traffic study there, but just to clarify, if we go a half mile west, those same concerns are not there. So
Correct.
we
Yes.
still, so just thank you. So we may need future study and looking at the intersection around the landfill, but that is, as compared to the intersection that's the potential turn-in that we have today, you would say those are two different situations.
And yes, two entirely different situations. And I'm not saying that all of our roads can operate with approaches spaced close together without requiring traffic studies, because that's not true. We have a standard out there for access spacing. This meets our access spacing that we have on the books, and even with that access spacing, if other conditions are present, we can still require a traffic study. But I don't believe it's necessary in this location.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions of Jacob? I have one for Mason, if we could bring him back up. Mason, I'm looking at that picture, and I mean, the red is the entire property. Are we rezoning the entire property or just the part right there?
So it'd be a conditional use permit just for the part in the site plan. So if you look at this edge of the site plan here, we'll look at the site plan and then I'll zoom up and kind of try to square off where it would be. It'd be essentially this. And one of the conditions of approval is that the conditional use permit has to follow the site plan. So the only part of the property that for this permit that could be used for the tree grinding operation would be this part listed in the site plan. This location map here, since that 10 to 13 acres over here is not a separate property from the rest, we have to notify based on this entire red box for notification purposes to neighbors. And since this is the legal description of the property, that is what we have to notify based off of and make our location map off of. But for the purposes of the site, where it would be operating, it's only allowed to be operating where this site plan is stating, which would be that east.
Is the applicant buying that entire red outline or just the 13 acres?
That would be a question for the applicant, I guess. When they applied, Mueller Pallets was listed as the applicant, and it's still owned by ALS LLC. If they've proceeded to purchasing only a portion of it or all of it, I guess maybe that'd be a better question for them.
Please.
Yeah, we have a contract to purchase.
Can you come to the mic?
Yep.
The contract with ALS is to purchase just what's identified as the site plan. It's about 12.8 acres, just the east 450 feet of that larger parcel.
So stay there then. So there's one access point, and the farmer needs access through the same access point that you're looking for, or that's already there, I guess, to maintain their fields, to do their agricultural production.
Correct. That part of what's been negotiated with the owner is to allow access via an easement or license, as Margie mentioned, immediately along the north edge of the property, but they'll be using the same approach. There won't be any new approach that's needed for the property.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Commissioner Blindberg.
Thank you. If I could ask a follow-up after Mason, after you explained that about the parcel and not the rest of the property, just this smaller section. Does that mean that in the event of like another ice storm in the middle of the winter, like we had a few years ago, would they be able to use that farmland for overflow, or they wouldn't be able to?
Nope. They would have to apply to amend the conditional use permit to amend the area where they'd be able to stockpile, but based on what we're approving today, they'd only be able to use what's in that site plan. If there was ever a large event, obviously those aren't predictable, so that's not something that they could get in advance. So yeah, if there was ever a large windstorm like we had last year or something to that effect, they would only be able to use what's highlighted on the site plan. They wouldn't be able to extend into the farmland.
Okay, and then if I could ask a follow-up of the applicant. Do you have a plan in place for those sort of situations? That if there was a wind event or ice storm, I know those areas by the landfill were very busy at those times.
Our experience historically was that at the site in Lincoln County, that was 7 acres. And in those events that have taken place in recent history and during the duration of the lease, we never exceeded that footprint. In those particular storm events, we contracted with the city of Sioux Falls to perform some grinding operations in city limits at particular sites to help them address the tree debris. So it didn't mean more debris necessarily at our site, but we resolved it that way.
Would it mean increased grinding hours at the site?
We will abide by what we are approved to operate. So it may mean that we're grinding different hours in Sioux Falls city limits based upon our agreement with the city. But at this site, we will comply with what the county commission approves.
Thank you.
A question for Mason, if we can bring him back up. Mason, it's been kind of talked about by both parties today of the need for an additional condition related to solid waste permit or other permits. Do you have suggested language on that to keep it to the solid waste permit or some catch-all of all applicable permits? How would you recommend that we go about that?
Sure. So based on discussions between the petitioner and the planning director over yesterday and today, it was determined by the planning director that they're going to be required to, based on the language in the solid waste ordinance, they'd be required to get a solid waste permit to operate even if you don't require it as a condition. So I guess the petitioner also did mention that us requiring a solid waste permit might require them to get a state solid waste permit. So I think the requirement of having a specific solid waste permit would make more sense because that would be a catch-all of everything instead of being, because I guess the general condition requiring all necessary permits is kind of redundant because in order to operate, they have to obtain all the necessary permits. So if you wanted to put in a condition specifically that for the solid waste, you could, requiring them to obtain a solid waste permit through the county commission. But like I said, it was the planning director's decision that they're going to be required to get one whether or not it's listed as a condition or not.
So would you say it's somewhat similar to existing condition 6 that came up from the planning commission that they have to have a building permit? So kind of frame it off of that.
Yeah.
So the building permit would be just part of the process here, but
Right.
we just need to add solid waste permit as another functional step.
Yep, it would be the same wording as that permit, or as that condition, just as solid waste generally has that wording.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you, Mason.
And I did, just so that I don't, if you can turn this on, I don't think I put it in the packet, but I just wanted, in reference to Commissioner Kipley's question, I just wanted to show what he was referencing in terms of the site distances. So this was submitted at the last meeting. So this is the nearest house to the northeast. So this is from the current landfill site and then the proposed Mueller pallet site. So as you can see, it's according to their measurements, it's farther away. And then the other one directly across the road from the landfill access. And as you can see, they're fairly similar here to the existing site. So I think that's what you were referencing, Commissioner Kipley. So I just wanted to have that in the record. But
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Look to the commission for Action, discussion. Commissioner Blindberg.
Thank you. I have the luxury of living out on this side of town, so I have firsthand knowledge of the conditions of the road and the impact that the landfill has on it. So I can tell you that the traffic count might be similar to other areas, but that 3-mile section of road that we're talking about from the Wall Lake Road to the Wildwater West Road serves a very large number of purposes. I know somebody mentioned 3 school districts, but I think it might be 4. Lennox, T, West Central, and Parker buses all travel through that section, that little 3-mile section of road. All of the construction dump trucks, the side dump trucks that go to and from the landfill, go right down that small 3-mile section of road. And it's not uncommon, I know somebody else mentioned, that people who are familiar with that road know the hazards and can navigate it somewhat cautiously and safely, but I've had windshield chips, rocks flying up. It's not uncommon to have to swerve out of your lane to avoid anything from bungee cords to pieces of plywood. So in my opinion, there's already enough hazards on this section. It's not, I know we need to be careful to not endorse the not in my backyard philosophy, but a small increase of traffic in this area is going to be significant on top of the already large number of vehicles and trucks and buses that travel there. I have a hard time approving this CUP for that reason. So my preference would be to deny. I'd be open to a discussion about deferring, but I feel like the residents of this area are going to remember 2023 as the year that they came back here over and over and over, and I feel like that's a disservice to them as well. Those are my thoughts.
Mr. Chair, I can give some background. Like you said, Commissioner Bleinberg, we've heard this multiple times, and we've heard a few different iterations, and I think comparing some of those iterations are helpful to help us decide where we are today. The first proposal we saw was basically asking for an entry at the landfill entrance, so kind of doubling down on a busy traffic area, but saying, well, this is a intersection that can handle big traffic area, and so long as we get a right-of-way and we kind of have a partnership with the city, maybe this is just the best way to combine a grinding operation right next to the landfill and have just one entrance that is clear to all visitors to that area. That definitely had some merits and demerits, and we heard that at the Planning Commission level, and I think that actually passed at the Planning Commission level and got up to this level where we needed help from the city. Basically, one of the conditions of the conditional use permit was that they had to get a right away from the city. So it'd be dead on arrival if the city wasn't up for that. About 3 months later, we got an answer functionally from the city that they weren't up for that. So we were a little frustrated with that delay, and that took some time. But basically that put Muller Pallets in a situation where they needed to find a different option. They wanted to keep this. So the second iteration of this, that was probably the weakest iteration, frankly, was using that same location, east, basically adjacent to the landfill, but creating a new entryway. And our highway department said that's going to create a traffic issue, that now you're going to have a left turn into that entryway and a left turn into the main landfill. And so that one, we had a divided planning commission recommendation there. I think there were good arguments on both sides, but it was probably going to come down to a determination and a traffic study by the highway department and how to manage that. And there weren't, at the surface level, really clear answers on that. So I could have seen, even if we had provided a conditional use permit, it could have been killed in that traffic study process. And I don't know that that was fair to Muller Pallets to have to bear the burden of that traffic study, which gets me to, I guess, to my larger point into the issue at hand. I feel like they have found a location that takes a lot of the traffic situations out of, even though that was a lot of the discussion today. I think
a lot of the traffic issues are out of play when you get to the west, and that is basically ratified by our highway department. So I think of the three scenarios we've seen, this is the most, just the best at balancing the interests of those involved. On the benefits side, I think not having them in operation, I think they are a community good, a benefit to our area to have some place to bring these products. We've talked about from an emergency management perspective, different derechos or windstorms or ice storms. We need partners like this in our community to be in operation. So I think we have some effort to be good community partners and work with these businesses to find a proper location. And like we said, we've went through 3 iterations of this and I think landed on the best of the 3. But I do respect that we had 191 signatures. We had great turnout here tonight. We had, I think, good faith public comments on all of this. I do, sometimes it feels like deja vu all over again. We've had 3 hearings on this. We hear similar comments, but I keep coming back to the first set of comments that I think were kind of that first gut feeling and sense of the neighborhood that was largely from the outset. There was concerns about litter and debris along that road and traffic on the road. And I think those are still legitimate concerns. I would just say this, just to be frank with that neighborhood and what do we need to work on moving forward, this feels a little bit like a proxy war with the city landfill. So the city landfill brings some of these concerns of debris, snow melts in the winter and then we see the debris, and how could we be better cleaning that up? How could we be better managing the traffic on the east side of that entry point? So I just don't know that this is the correct forum or venue to litigate those issues, and that we need to be working with the city and with County Highway and what are the concerns here and address those concerns. I think when we had the initial hearing here, we were doing some basic math that somewhere between 4% of the traffic would be attributable to Miller Pallets, and now we're talking their turnoff being west of the intersection that is of interest here. So I just think, when a ratio is something like 20-1 or 50-1, the traffic and debris and issues that we're seeing are vehicles on their way to the city landfill. I think we should tailor solutions to solve that issue, and I wouldn't hold that against an operation that we have a need for and has a land use. So again, back to one of our analysis here as a planning and zoning commission, then up to the county commission, we're looking at the land use. This was unanimously approved at the planning commission level. Again, prior iterations of this were not unanimously approved and had real issues with them. But this was unanimously approved as a proper land use. We just saw that there's a similar use at almost exactly same distance of a grinding operation, same amount of grinding time per week. If we're not seeing health effects or complaints or major issues, I just don't know that this is going to bring something new. So again, we look at the traffic and some of the other issues, balancing of interests here, and I think we've got some work to do. We've got some good constituent response that I think it's going to take some partnerships with other local government agencies and work through some other issues along the way. But I'm prepared to approve this conditional use permit today.
Mine's going to be much shorter. No, we have an inside joke on that. I will tell you that I appreciate all the input that I've had, and I've had a lot, almost comparable to the pipeline issue. So it's impossible to get back to everybody and talk about how this is being worked at. As Mr. Kipley has said, this is the 3rd time, and I think it needs to be the last. In all my years of public service, it always boils down to the same thing almost every time. It's about traffic, noise, property values, maintaining my neighborhood. Well, unfortunately, all of us have to deal with growth, and whether we like it or not, it's going to come. And the city of Sioux Falls is growing, the communities around it are growing, the commercial environment is growing, the population is growing. They've been good neighbors where they've been. I think they'll be good neighbors to the landfill. I really feel like we're going to be dealing with this again in 10 years with joint jurisdiction, but I don't believe that, frankly, people's experiences are going to be as nearly as negative as it's been produced. So I'm going to support this. I really feel like there's always a concern for the unknown, and when the unknown doesn't happen, we're comfortable. If there's little things that we need to address, like Mr. Kipley again said, we will address those. And certainly the Highway Department and Planning and Zoning will do that also. But I really feel like we need to move forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anything to add? Okay.
I'd have an amendment. You could start with an amendment before.
Can I make my comments
yes,
first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This one's tough. A couple things weigh on my mind. It's the Sioux Falls growth area. 30-year projections are from basically 41st Street or even down to 57th Street, all the way up to Wall Lake and up to Highway 38 for this to be a growth area over the next 30 years. I mean, we're not putting in a lot of infrastructure here. We're talking about a tree grinding operation with mobile equipment. So factoring that into my considerations. 4 years ago, we had a discussion. This was there was a request to rezone this exact same property to residential, and the concerns were identical. Traffic's not, to me, is not a valid argument when it comes to the growth. I mean, growth is going to happen, as Commissioner Benega said. It's up to the highway engineers and traffic people to figure out how to construct the roads to maintain that traffic. If you live close to it, and I live as close to Highway 42 as you guys do to this road, you know, traffic is what it is. With growth, it's going to happen. Yeah, this one is weighing heavily on me on which way to go. So I'm looking forward to hearing some amendments to the proposal. And you know, when I look at the number of days of grinding, I don't know if Commissioner Kipley's considering that is in his amendments. It's currently at 5 to 8. I'd like to see that limited to something similar, or maybe a little bit reasonably more, maybe 10 or 12 days a month, if to keep the amount of dust down and the concerns about the operation down. But Commissioner?
I'll start with an amendment to add an additional condition. We can call that condition 12, that a solid waste permit shall be required in conjunction with a tree grinding operation. That's my motion.
I would second that.
Okay, so we have a motion to add an amendment to have included in the conditions a solid waste permit approval. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, so that was just approving an amendment to the conditional use permit. Commissioner Kipley.
That was the primary amendment I had in mind. If the chair is, I guess my next motion would have been to approve the CUP. I'm looking to you if you have hesitation on that, or if you'd like want to entertain further amendments, and we can talk around days of operation. Seems to be where your focus is.
Yes, I would like to see the days limited to no more than 12 days a month grinding operation. So I don't know if I can make a motion from the chair. Not typically.
I think I'm happy to do so, just for the sake of discussion here, and we can hash some of that out. I'd make a motion to add an additional condition that
or maybe we can, within condition two currently reads that the process of grinding wood shall only take place during the hours of 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 7 a.m. to noon on Saturdays. And then I would just add a sentence to that. So my motion would be to amend that by adding, in no case shall the grinding operation be conducted more than 12 days in the month, in a calendar month.
I'll second that. That's similar to what I was going to use as a number.
Any discussion?
What was the previous number?
Currently, they're grinding 5 to 8 days a month.
And did we have a regulation in the CUP? We
No,
don't.
currently it's just regulating hours of operation, but in theory it could be all 31 days in a month, or, well, barring Sundays are excluded, but it could be every Monday through Friday and Saturday currently. But this would add, they can pick which 12 days they want within that, is basically the framework that I'm proposing. So it would be an upper limit of 12 days.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right.
Commissioner Kipley? Could I rely on either staff or commissioners with more planning and zoning experience to help me along if this would be an appropriate amendment? Some of the concerns, I think that some of the fallout of this will be that there may be vehicles that want to bring wood when the gate, there's going to be a gate from what I understand when it's closed. When the gate is closed. So if there's dumping out on a township road or somewhere out there, is that something that should be included in an amendment? And along those lines, I know I heard verbally, I think, in minutes or read in minutes that it was stated that we could require tarping, but I don't know if that was ever added. And then I'm not sure how that would be enforced. I know the landfill already requires tarping, but often that doesn't happen and they're staffed and monitored.
So I'll turn to Mason on this one. Mason, is there a requirement that loads like this be tarped?
There is not currently, but Commissioner Bleinberg is correct that the city does have a condition that they are tarped, and there is a sign at the north edge of the landfill access that says all trucks coming into the landfill must be tarped.
That's the landfill, that's not this.
Yes. No, I was just stating that she is correct in saying that, but if you wanted to, you could require them to have the same condition or the same sign, or that is all things you could add as a condition if the commission would like to.
I have very limited planning and zoning experience, so I would like to rely on.
Well, you
those
can
of
make a motion that all loads to this place be tarped.
Okay, I will make a motion that we add an amendment that all loads would need to be tarped. Is that the extent to which we can include?
Sounds fine to me.
Okay, that is my motion.
I'll second it for conversation, but I'd like to hear from the operator and how that works.
So as was reflected in my letter to you on Friday, we are intending to require our suppliers to obtain a license from us. So they're gonna need to sign an agreement to enter our property to drop off wood in large quantities. That will require them to tarp or otherwise secure their load. So we'd like the opportunity to show to you and to the neighbors that we can self-police that. But if you are gonna pass the amendment, please be careful to not require just tarping. The landfill requirement is tarping or otherwise secured. So there are certain instances in which a tarp may not be appropriate due to the size of the truck, or but that straps or chains would suffice for securing the load. So my first request would be, give us a chance to prove that as a private industry, we can do a better job of this, policing it ourselves than the government does. But if you are inclined to amend and add another condition, please give us that flexibility.
Stay there if you don't mind. I'm gonna follow up on that if you don't mind. This is a free wood drop-off for anybody in the area, correct? So me as a resident of Minnehaha County could haul up, cut down a tree and load it on my trailer, tarp it, secure it, whatever, and bring it there. But if the gate's closed, I'm not allowed to drop it off, correct?
That's correct. And I understand the concern, but I think it's a little unfair to have us police township roads and where, sort of where does it end?
And there's ordinances in effect at this point anyway.
Correct. But I can tell you that historically at their other site, our employees spend some of their time picking up other people's messes because we do things the right way and it's the right thing to do. But I'm not comfortable in that being a condition or obligation placed upon the applicant.
Commissioner, would you be willing to amend your motion to be tarped and/or secured?
Yes, that is my motion.
Commissioner Benega, would you?
I think the agreement that Mr. Cheddar just talked about is a good start, and I don't think we need to add other things to it from a regulatory standpoint.
So you're not gonna?
I'm not gonna support
Not gonna
the requirement. I think they know who they do business with better than we do, and frankly, they can be the ones that are responsible for making sure that their vendors are living with that regulation.
Personally, I'm not concerned about the vendors. I'm concerned about the me's, the ones that are bringing their own trees and not having them secured and/or tarped. So I see some validity to having that requirement.
I can also tell you I've been to the dump many times, and I always tarp my stuff at home, but I know that people pull off to the side of the road and tarp before they get to the entrance of the dump. I see it all the time.
I've seen pictures of it, yes. Doesn't make it right.
No, but it doesn't help regulation either.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty difficult. Nothing seems to happen, and frankly, I'm disappointed that the city doesn't have a little better system of tracking that.
The dump police monitoring the roads. Okay.
Yeah.
We've had you up here, so I will allow it.
Just in that regard, I think that having it as an added condition will contribute to playing a game of gotcha, right? If we've got that as a condition, then if a neighbor down the road to the east sees a vehicle passing without a tarp, then that's a complaint that we're not complying, and we don't know if it's our customer or if it's the landfill, a person visiting the landfill. So adding that as a condition, I think, will create the potential for greater animosity and problems here rather than giving us a chance to police our suppliers.
Thank you.
Maybe I haven't heard on one matter that is relevant to this point.
Kind of out of compliance with what we typically do. Legal counsel, any rules that we'd be violating by reopening testimony? So much power. Please.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll be very brief, I assure you. I do think this might be relevant to the question that you're contemplating today, and I just want to point out, with the solid waste permit application that we have all agreed that Mueller will need to pursue, there is a regulation within that ordinance that requires transportation of solid waste to be enclosed or covered. I think this kind of ties into my earlier point that the application for conditional use permit is premature and that this other permit needs to be considered in conjunction. We also did submit suggested conditions to add to the permit to Mueller's counsel this morning. I just want to make the commission aware of what my clients had suggested as reasonable conditions, in addition to what the Planning Commission had already imposed. The first would be to have some type of a tree barrier going around the perimeter of the site. The site plan right now is very vague as to what types of windbreak or cover is going to be actually provided, and we'd ask that the commission place some type of condition in the permit to require that it be implemented. The second would be that the driveway be paved and the turnaround so that we don't have the issue of mud and gravel flinging onto the county roadway and breaking people's windshields. The third would be to consider a wind speed restriction of 10 miles an hour so that we don't have the dust blowing into residential areas. And another would just be to consider volume restrictions for the operation. And I won't take any more of the commission's time. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak again.
Thank you, Lisa. Since I allowed you to speak, I got to give opportunity for rebuttal if there is any.
I'll just wait and speak to any of those that you want to consider. I'll speak to specifically, but I think the conditions that have been suggested by planning and as you've amended are sufficient for the applicant's use of the property.
Okay. So we don't have a motion to approve or deny at this point, so I'm going to make an additional comment to for consideration to my fellow commissioners. I really think the solid waste permit should be heard before we take action on this, because I don't recall any time we've done a solid waste permit before this commission. And I'd like to have that process more fully vet what is going on here, whether it be pollutants, carcinogens, dust, berms, trees, whatever it might be. I'd like to hear more about go through that process before I go through the process of approving this contingent upon approval of a solid waste permit. I know we're kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit, but I think it's, in my mind, the right process to go through.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I would respectfully disagree that I think we wanted some finality to this CUP today, even though I think we're at 12 or 13 conditions, and some of those will require additional things like a solid waste permit or a building permit. I think it's natural. At one point, we had a version of this that was going to require a traffic study, and we were potentially moving on that was a different location. But I think inherent to some of these conditional use permits, they have some contingencies, and I don't know, projecting us forward, hypothetically, if we approved this today and we heard the solid waste at an appropriate amount of time in the future, I think all we would be deciding is the narrow issue of the solid waste, and I don't know that we would open this back up. So we'd have it down to that one narrow issue. We'd decide it yes or no there, and it would either propel the project forward or kill it for having failed one of its conditional use, one of its conditions. So I guess I'm comfortable moving forward today, and I didn't have a desire myself to take up any amendments. I think they're actually taken care of in the solid waste aspect, and I would strongly encourage Mueller Pallets to have its own, as a private sector, to have a policy of covering, tarping, or otherwise securing, but I would like them to work that out with their customers. With that, I guess I would get us going here, barring other discussion from my colleagues, but I'd make a motion to approve the conditional use permit as amended.
Sure. There's already a pending motion on the table.
Okay. Did that fail for lack of a second?
That's I forgot. I was going to mention that since Commissioner Benninga did not approve his second to the amended, that died for a lack of a second.
Yeah, hearing no second. Okay, then are we grounds for a new motion then?
Please.
So my motion is to approve the conditional use permit as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call vote.
Kipley.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Bleinberg.
No.
Karski.
No. Motion or the appeal is not approved.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
As per our recent pipeline discussion, I would remind the Chair, that means this kicks over to the next meeting, so it will have to be reconsidered by the full board again at the next meeting.
True to that, isn't it? So that would be the next meeting when everybody is present, will not be till November 21st, I think.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I think statute says it's the very next.
The very next meeting, okay, so, yeah.
I think your microphone is off.
Oh, sorry.
So, yeah, so next Tuesday, we'll have the same quorum.
I thought Commissioner Bender was out of town.
She is. And the next one, I think
Why
Commissioner.
would we bring everybody back when we know we may not have it change?
Because state law says we have to.
That's a poor excuse.
And yeah, I do not see a change, well, yeah, I mean, it could be November 21st till we have a full quorum of commissioners here, as far as I know, but from the calendars. So we may continue to kick this can down the road for a while. So this will be then remanded to the October 24th commission meeting. Please,
Mr.
Counselor.
Chair, I actually think the way the statute is currently worded, and I would agree with Commissioner Bennigan's assessment of that language, but the legislature didn't really envision that as being a repeated process. It will die at the next meeting if it does not get a passing vote.
So,
but it has to, the first time it ties, it has to be kicked to the next meeting.
Okay, so it could die on a 2-2 vote at the next meeting. All righty. So, we all know the game then. Next week, this will be heard again. We will limit testimony next week, unless somebody brings something new or a commissioner would want to bring a new amendment. We will consider this at next week's meeting. So, thank you, everybody. We're going to give the room an opportunity to clear out. It's been a couple of hours, and I don't think everybody wants to be here for the next agenda item. resume our meeting. Item number 9, public hearing to consider a 2024 retail on-sale liquor license commission. Reporter Kim Christian.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kim Christensen with the Auditor's Office. The Auditor's Office has received two applications for a 2024 retail on-sale liquor license from 19 Flags LLC and Buffalo Trading Post. This license would allow for the sale of liquor to be consumed at their establishments located within Minnehaha County. According to the 2020 census numbers, we have one available license. In addition, on Friday, October 13th at 3:19 p.m., we received official notification from 19 Flakes that was withdrawing the application submitted on behalf of Mapleton Golf Course. So we only have one license available for your consideration. The license fee for a new license is determined based on the location to the nearest proposed establishment. So the fee for the Buffalo Trading Post is based of the location near Colton, which is $1,200 in addition to a $55 publishing fee. The applications were sent to the Sheriff's Department, State's Attorney's Office, and Planning Department for review, and no objections or concerns were reported.
All righty. This is a public hearing. Any questions of Kim, first of all? So you look for proponents to the licensing. Anybody here to speak for it?
I'm Justin Kelson, the new owner of the Buffalo Trading Post. I put the application in for the license, being that the fact that we are taking over an establishment that is 96 years old. And not only are we looking to make small improvements, but as a business, you're looking to add benefits to the community around you. And we believe being able to add liquor or alcohol to the establishment other than malt beverage would be an added bonus for us and also for our small farming community out there.
All righty. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Any other proponents? Any opponents? All righty. Turn it over to the commission for action or questions. Kim, are we approving one or two licenses? One. And we get to pick one? Is that?
No, the only one available is Buffalo Trading Post. The other one was withdrawn on Friday.
Thank you. I knew there was something going on there. Mine's a little muddy. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this would have been a difficult procedural task, I think, because I think only one license is available, and if we had two applicants, my understanding is that other applicant has found other means or other business proposals, so they withdrew. So that simplifies our analysis today, and I think this is a proposal with merit, without any opposition testimony or concerns from anyone. So I would make a motion to approve.
Second?
Motion is second. Roll call vote, please.
Kipley.
Aye.
Blyenberg.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Item 10, Sioux Falls Area Humane Society presentation, James Oppenheimer and Kaylee Haar.
Thank you, Commission, for taking the time to talk to us today. I thought all those people were here to see us and learn about animals, but apparently we're not as popular as we thought. I'm James Oppenheimer. I'm the Executive Director of the Sioux Falls Area Humane Society. We have an agreed contract with you guys for 2024, so it's been approved. So we just wanted to come, thank you for that approval, and just talk to you a little bit, rather than giving you a big, long PowerPoint presentation, talk to you a little bit about the Humane Society and how much we value our partnership with Minnehaha County. The Sioux Falls Area Humane Society, our mission is to be a safe haven and human voice for all animals in need. We provide a safe haven to 8,000 animals a year. We're an open admission shelter, so if that means if anything walks in our door, we have to take it. From dog, cat, hairless rat, hairless guinea pig, lizard, snake, pheasant, they all walk in our door and we try and provide them with a safe haven. We have 64 staff and work off a $3 million budget. We are funded primarily by adoptions, by contracts, such as the animal control contract we have with Minnehaha County, and by the generosity of the Sioux Falls public. In 2023, we've had a couple of updates. We have become open to the public again. We were by appointment only to come get an animal due to COVID, which hopefully is not coming back. We have now opened up to the public so anyone can walk into our doors, become an approved visitor, and come see an animal. Our adoptions become paperless, so you can adopt without using paper. It's a quicker process, just via a link sent to your phone. And we've partnered with the Cat Cafe that's a couple of blocks away, which is another nice addition to the county and to Sioux Falls. 25-ish animals are in there at any one point in time. And again, you can have a cup of coffee, see your cat, and if you want to take that cat home while you're drinking coffee, you can fill out our paperless application and take it home with you. We have a number of really, we've seen as a result of some of this, a 20% increase in adoptions this year, and a 20% decrease in euthanasia this year. Those are directly related. The quicker we can get animals through our system, the more likely they are to be adoption candidates. We've also seen a decrease in the average length of stay by 2 days. We've got a number of really important programs we have at the Humane Society. Those include our adoption program, 3,300 animals adopted a year. We have our spay-neuter program. We have our paroled pups program, where we work with the penitentiary. Some animals, ironically, that are less well-behaved go to the penitentiary. We have 8 kennels there, and some inmates help train the dogs, and they come back usually much more obedient. These guys spend 8 hours a day with the dogs. They also tend to come back 10 pounds heavier as they get really well fed there. But that's an important program. But a vital program we have is our animal control program. We provide animal control for 5 counties and 37 cities throughout the area. By far, our largest animal control contract is with the Minnehaha County. We do a lot of, we bring in the animals, take care of them, and work with the counties, with the cities within the counties. To tell you a little bit more about it, I have Kaylee Ha, our Animal Welfare Manager, and I'm going to pass it over to her.
Hello. You guys got to meet me last year very briefly, but I am, of course, Kaylee Ha, the Animal Welfare Manager by definition, but also was an officer for the last 3 years, and now supervising the officers we currently have that serve Minnehaha. So we have 4 total officers serving Minnehaha County, and I'm going to correct James just a little bit. We're up to you guys, 4 other counties, and 30 cities currently for 2023. With those 4 officers, we are 24/7, 7 days a week. We do holidays, doesn't matter. If you guys call us, we're out there. We also can be emergency contracted by various other jurisdictions to assist where need be. Most recently, you've probably seen the Brookings one has come in and requested the Humane Society's assistance. That would be an emergency contract that we also assist with. But for some numerical totals, 2022 comparatively to 2023, I said I think pretty close to the same thing last year, where we were seeing quite an increase in call volume in general. 2022 total call volume for Minnehaha County was 319. It was about 30% of our call volume. And so far through September 30th of this year, we're already at 32% of our total call volume coming from Minnehaha County. That is a pretty solid increase if you think of how the rest of the year is going to pan out here. We brought in 299 animals specifically from county for the Minnehaha County last year, and 292 so far this year already through the 30th. Some other numbers that I played around with, because we are also contracted individually with the cities within Minnehaha County, pretty close to every city. I could be wrong on that. I need to have my list in front of me, but Brandon, Del Rapids, Hartford, Baltic, Garrettson, you name it, we probably cover it. So that will bring in even a larger volume to look at the county as a whole, even though they have their separate contracts. So 2022, Minnehaha County as a whole, with all of our contracted cities within you guys, was 55% of our call volume. And so far this year, close to 57%. So you're up there and you're doing very good on that. We get a lot of animals from you guys, and we just very much appreciate working with you. Like I said, he said, you're our biggest contract. You are our biggest supporter. I said the same thing last year again, too, that the deputies and everybody that we work with in Minnehaha County is always fantastic, very understanding of us, and very supportive. So with that, if you guys have any questions about how we operate, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair, just one thought, and I know James from our mutual connection and leadership Sioux Falls, I appreciate you continuing to grow as a leader in our community, and Kaylee, I appreciate your leadership as well. I would have guessed the opposite of what James was presenting. That's great leadership on your part and management, I guess, to be turning over length of stay kind of gives me similar to some of my healthcare world, trying to get the throughput of operations. Because I would have guessed, anecdotally, I thought a lot of people got new pets during COVID for companionship and then realized they weren't good pet owners or whatnot and wanted to back out on that. I'm sure you have anecdotes of that, but it seems like your numbers are the inverse of that you're putting them in solid homes, that it's not coming back to you. But do you have a kind of a return rate, or do you have anecdotes from the COVID experience that either of you could speak to?
Yeah, so personally, I guess I will allow James to step in if he would like to. I don't have a return rate in front of us. It's not super beneficial for us to track it because the return rate is fairly low because we're screening the adopters. Okay. However, you did see, I'd say, a fair increase of the surrenders from what I would see. So I also work with our parole pups and stuff, and some of those dogs that we ended up taking up there are dogs that are coming in within their juvenile kind of age frame, 1.5 years old, which you track back 2020, fallen in that age where you can tell they had no training, and that's when people start to get sick of them. So there's trends that you can see just being within the facility and working within the facility, but I don't have a solid number. I will say opening back up to the public I was hugely in support of that. It's been fantastic. Everybody likes that. I mean, who really wants to schedule an appointment to meet a dog? You would rather have it be in front of you, greeting you before you make the decision. So that has been super, super supportive for us, and changing our numbers and even improving things like a return rate. So
thank you.
James, if you would like to.
Katie said it.
Thank you.
Other questions? Alrighty, so this is a presentation. We appreciate it. See you next year, I guess.
See you next year.
Yeah, thanks for the good work. All right, moving on. We have a presentation now from Brooke Hendricks on the Sioux Empire Livestock Show. Morning.
Good morning. Brooke Hendricks, the Agribusiness Manager at the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce, and I want to thank you, Commissioners, for having me today, but also for the service that you provide to the residents and those of Minnehaha County, as seen this morning, but also previous meetings that I've been at. I really appreciate all that you do, not only for them, but also then for the Agribusiness Division and what you provide us to allow us to continue funding for events that we have. As you can see before you is the cover letter that I wrote for you. It is referenced our Sioux Empire Livestock Show. Now, I chose that event to reference as it is our longest and probably our largest event that we do produce as the Agribusiness Division of the Chamber. And so that was where I highlight some of the biggest things that we also provide for the city as well. If we could scroll down to the slides, I bet I have the mouse for that too, sorry. But if we go through this as well, the Agribusiness pillar or division of the chamber is historically the longest standing pillar of the chamber, and it's made up of members from the community, not specifically related to agriculture. They're from other businesses or other areas as well, and they come together with one solid goal, and that is to promote the agriculture industry in a way that they see fit for the community. And so, like I referenced, we do that through some three kind of key events. One that we just hosted, of course, was our National Farmers Day at the Barn that looks to celebrate National Farmers Day that's held annually on October 12th, excuse me. And then we do have upcoming January 23rd through the 28th, our 71st annual Sioux Empire Livestock Show, and that's another historical piece. And as well, the most other historical one is our Egg Appreciation Day that is held during the Sioux Empire Fair. And like I said, we just hosted our National Farmers Day at the barn, and although, if I scroll down to see just a little bit of numbers, we do usually try to have 115 attendance. Unfortunately, the cold and wet, rainy weather turned some of those away, But it's not always about the quantity you have, it's about the quality you have. We had about 50 members that came through between adults and children, and I got to have a conversation with almost every single one of them, and it was great. One of them was a farmer passing through to go see some of his children because of the weather. One of them was a family that came out because they brought their kids last year and their kids wouldn't stop talking about coming to this event. So it's a great event that we put on. We partner with other commodity groups from across the state that come together to provide some crafts and some other activities to teach kids about agriculture. And it's just a great kind of low-key event that we put on. Like I referenced as well, our largest and our longest event that we put on is our 71st annual Sioux Empire Livestock Show. So it's a 6-day event in January. It's a little cold, but I do pay for the heating, and I can tell you that it does get kind of warm sometimes in there, so that's awesome. But this event seeks to serve over 10,000 members from not only the Sioux Falls community, but from across the nation, and they truly do come from across the nation. And we've had some from Texas all the way up to South Dakota and beyond, as far over as Colorado, and of course as Indiana and Illinois. And so with the funds that we do receive, we're able to provide more programming in terms of livestock shows for these kids, more events for the exhibitors to produce. So we've partnered with Minnehaha County 4-H to do a skill-a-thon that provides these kids skills that go just beyond the livestock in the show ring. It goes back to animal health, husbandry, and of course the basic knowledge that they need. And I think the key event that a lot of you have sat in on before is going to be our Sale of Champions on Friday night. And it's a very historical night, always a record-breaking night, but last year, we were able to provide over $107,000 in exhibitor premiums that go directly back to them, and the show does not receive any of that. And so that helps those 25 kids either purchase animals to come back in future years, or depending on their age, they do get used towards their college education. And based off of that as well, we gave away close to $9,000 in exhibitor scholarships as well for individuals to proceed with some post-secondary education from around the tri-state area as well. And a large one that I know most of you have all been a part of throughout the years and even this year is our annual Egg Appreciation Day. So we're coming up on the 41st annual in August, but we just had our 40th annual, and I was very pleased to have a lot of you there. But this event seeks to celebrate agriculture as a whole, but also to give back. And so with that give back, this year we were able to serve over 3,000 members of the community, agriculture and urban alike, and that's kind of what the focus of the division is to bring those two together to teach each other about, maybe the misconceptions that as an agriculture industry that we can provide for them, but as an agriculture industry what we can teach them and how agriculture goes more than just beyond the plate that's in front of you. And so we do that to advance not only the community here in Sioux Falls, but to advance the agriculture industry and the Sioux Empire as an agriculture leader, not only in the tri-state area, but also across the nation. And with that, I'll take any questions or comments that you have at this time.
Thank you, Brooke. Questions? Yeah, thank you for the work you do. The chamber event is big, and I go to many of them with the agribusiness, so thanks for the hard work you do. All right, we have an update, and this isn't a public hearing, but on health and dental insurance premium. So good morning, Carrie.
Good morning, Carrie Deaver from Human Resources. This is the time of year when I review with you where we're at with our health and dental insurance program and ask for your support on premiums for the upcoming year. So I'm sure you all recall that we have a self-funded health and dental insurance plan. Our employees can take either one or both together. What you have in front of you is a summary of the factors that we take into consideration, or at least some of the factors we take into consideration when setting premiums. We try to give you a bit of a look back period so you can get a comparison to previous years, so you have about 5 years of data here. You can tell from this that our claims for dental have gone up fairly significantly for this year. That was an anticipated expense. We added our prevention pays this year, which has had some impact, but again, the whole purpose of doing that is to make sure people are getting the dental care that they need. Also, I would say our dental claims do have a history of fluctuating pretty significantly, so I wouldn't be surprised if that comes down. Overall trend for our increases per year are about 6% for the past 5 years, so when I'm projecting forward, what I'm doing is taking what we anticipate our claims will end in 2023, adding that 6% trend to project out our 2024 costs. The other factor we look at with that is our administrative fees. We're not expecting an increase for next year. So all told, we're expecting about $550,000 of expenses for 2024. Given where our premiums are at for this year, we would need about a 3% increase. So overall, not a bad increase for dental. If we went to the next slide, this is what our employees can expect. This is a comparison between our current premiums to our 2024 premiums. If you go down to the very bottom of that slide, you'll see that it's a very nominal increase for employees, less than $1 a month increase for family coverage. Do you have questions on the insurance costs for dental or the premiums?
I do. Carrie, what did we increase last year?
For last year, for the dental, we've got it on that bottom slide there. Is it 6?
I just see claims going up
Yes,
20%,
6%.
but we were able to get by with a 6% increase?
We were able to get by with a 6% increase, yes. So remember that we're adjusting each year.
Okay.
So it's not always a perfect projection. You can't always say, okay, we know we're going to have a 3% increase in costs, we'll increase premiums by 3%. Because when you get into the year, your actual cost could be higher or lower.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, that's dental, now health.
All right, so for health, there's a few more factors to be taken into consideration. Again, sort of the same format for you. You can tell that here too, it looks like we've had a pretty significant increase in claim costs. The biggest factor behind that is you might remember that we had a bit of a claim lag processing last year, so our total claims for the year went down. They didn't actually go down. They were just coming in slower for part of the year, and most of those were received in early 2023. And that is why it looks fairly significant. I'll admit this is one part of the analysis where we're sort of up in the air. I can't as accurately project what to expect for 2024, so I'm going to still use the 2023 data when projecting. For both the health and the prescription, we're anticipating about an 8% increase. That's not based on our history in this case because of those claim fluctuations. Instead, we're using medical trend for those areas. For stop-loss insurance premiums, those of you who were here back in 2018, 2019, remember we hit a bit of a snag where we had several people who hit that stop-loss amount, and we're used to experiencing about a 20% increase in stop-loss. Those renewals aren't in yet, but expect them back soon. But again, I think it's pretty safe to assume about a 20% increase. The admin fees, on the other hand, are pretty concrete. We've received the renewals from most of our partners for that, and we have an average increase of about 5%. A little good news in that area, you probably recall that we contract with an entity that goes by the name of RAM to help coordinate our network. We contract directly with the care systems, and we contract with our TPA. All of those entities have agreed to another 3-year renewal, so I'll be bringing contracts before you or amendments where they're needed, hopefully sometimes within the next 2 months. All told here too, based on our projected 2023 and using those factors for projecting into 2024, we're anticipating a possibility of having up to $8.2 million in total costs for 2024. Based on our premiums for 2023, the good news is we'd only need a 3% increase. If you look down to the premiums, what that means for our employees is about an increase of about $2.66 per pay period for employee only, $6.78 for E+1, and $9.44 for family insurance. So overall, I think it's a great premium projection looking forward for our employees. Do you have questions on the health insurance side?
Not seeing any.
Great. So the last chart has that summary, so you can get a sense. Overall, if you look at our 10-year average, we're below for both of those, which is great news. A couple of things I would just point out is our vision insurance, of course, is paid entirely by employees. We're not expecting any changes in premiums for that. We have no plan designs planned for either health or insurance, so no increase in deductibles or out-of-pocket maximums, so good news there too. Open enrollment should begin November 1st, and we're going to end it November 22nd, and we'll continue to use Munis to do that through self-service.
Mr. Chair, one question on this last chart.
Yeah.
So 2024, we budgeted for a 10% increase, but we're only doing a 3% increase. Can you just explain that discrepancy, and does this throw off our budget in any way?
It won't throw off your budget, but it will be that next year when we're looking that we'll have a little bit more play in those numbers because we didn't increase it by as much as we expected to. The reason for that is when we're doing budget, it's usually early in the year when we only have a few months of claim data to look. Particularly problematic this year when we knew that we didn't have all those 2022 claims cleared yet. So it was a little bit more challenging projecting forward. And we always try to be on the safe side, of course. We project around 8 to 10, whether we've had some years where we've projected maybe 15%. In this case, it's good news.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, Carrie, kind of enlighten me on your thinking on maybe aiming high and then giving a health insurance holiday.
Yeah. I try to aim accurate, right? And that's always the goal each year, is to aim as accurate as possible. But not to be in a position, I think my first year here, I came in and unfortunately we'd had some high claims and the commission looked at having to pass a premium increase that was higher than what they'd budgeted for earlier in the year. My goal is to never have you in that position again. But we try to project as accurately as we can. The good news is when we are taking in more premiums than we need, absolutely we do a premium holiday. And if any of you are watching the health fund right now, we're sitting in a good position. We've been taking in higher premiums than what I think our costs are going to end up being. Whenever we have that happen, we try and give the premium holiday so the employees that have been contributing get the value of that premium holiday. So here, this year, the good news, if we're looking at using an 8% projection, and I'm only recommending a 3%, part of the reason for that is because our current premiums are taking in what we need.
Okay. Well, I will say you are a great HR director, but you may have missed your calling as an actuary.
Oh, thank you. I feel very comfortable where I'm at instead.
Okay. All righty. So this does require, I'll ask for public input. Any comments from the public on our health insurance or dental insurance? Seeing none, this does require commission action.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Roll call vote.
Kipley.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Bleinberg.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 13, authorize chair to sign the acknowledgement and certification required by Executive Order 2023-13. Mr. Greco.
Okay, Tom Greco, Commission Administrative Officer. I'll go right to the executive order to explain kind of what we're doing here, actually the agreement that we're signing. So last month we applied for, you approved the application for a big grant. The Highway Department was up here. One thing we have since learned is that a certain certification has to be provided per an executive order that was signed in August. So what I'm asking you to do today is to affirm that certification. And basically what you're saying is that we, in the case of the big grant, are considered a contractor with the state. We are affirming that we understand Article 3, Section 12 of the South Dakota Constitution, which effectively says, and it's right here in this second whereas clause, the South Dakota Constitution prohibits state legislators from being interested directly or indirectly in any contract with the state or any county during their terms in office or for 1 year thereafter. And what we're stating is that as a contractor in this particular case, we understand that and that we don't have any legislators directly interested in a financial sense in terms of the contract that we're entering into. We understand that these types of provisions, this certification will be included in future state contracts. What the South Dakota Department of Transportation asked us to do is to sign this certification, again affirming that we could presumably use it for any other contracts that we enter into the state until the language starts getting incorporated. Subject to your question, that's all I have.
All righty. Questions for Tom? Again, we always look for public input. If anybody would like to comment on this, please, sir.
Chad Ellsworth, Rapid City. Yeah, I just want to note that from the public's perspective, this Executive Order 2023-13 is a remarkable document coming from the governor stating that there's corruption And it's to the point that she has to do an executive order to warn and ask the counties to watch out for it. At the bottom on one of the whereases, all branches of state government and county government may also act to guard against such dealings, of which she does, and most of it's about corruption. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? All right, look for commission discussion or action.
I'll move approval.
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Approved 4-0. Item 14, approve resolutions to authorize restoration of the properties to the former owner of record according to South Dakota Codified Law, Chapter 1025. Chris Swanson, Treasurer.
Hello, Commissioners. Chris Swanson, Minnehaha County Treasurer. Back in September, the Board of Commissioners authorized a property to be placed on the 2023 tax deed sale. South Dakota Codified Law 43-31-1 prohibits the sale of real property, excuse me, for taxes if the owner is 70 years older or the property is valued at less than $170,000, which he met both requirements. After the tax deed was recorded, we realized that this man did meet these statutory requirements, and so now we are asking for you to authorize restoration of the property to this gentleman.
All right. Questions of Chris?
I just had a question.
Commissioner Blindberg.
Thanks, Chris. I was just curious how that value is determined. What do we use to determine?
Equalization sets the price of the assessed value of the home, and then we look up on our website there, and we can tell what the assessed value of the home is.
Okay.
Yep.
So it doesn't have anything to do with the group that we sent to value the homes, right? Is that the same
No,
group?
no, not that. No, this one, yeah, it comes through equalization.
Great,
Yep.
thank you.
Appraised, not assessed, or assessed, not appraised. I
Correct.
guess. Yeah, okay, thank you. Public comment. All right, commission action.
Move
Make-
approval.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second, roll call vote, please.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Number 15, consider a motion to authorize the payment of $1,000 to the National Center for Public Lands Counties, Tom Greco.
All right, Commissioners, Tom Greco, Commission Administrative Officer again. Effectively, what I'm going to ask you to approve today amounts to a $1,000 donation to the South Dakota Association of Counties that will in turn be basically given to the National Association of Counties, which we're a member of, so that they can establish the National Center for Public Lands Counties. I explain up there what the purpose of the center is. It's to help raise attention and education, particularly at the federal level, to the important role public lands play in our nation's prosperity by showing how these lands are interconnected with counties' needs economically and from a natural infrastructure perspective. I do want to point out that this was discussed at the August 10, 2023 SDACC meeting where the board unanimously supported this endeavor to provide these contributions to the National Association of Counties for the center. It's certainly not required that each county provides, but again, strongly encouraged. This is a great opportunity for us to support the center. What I would ask today is that you do approve this. Essentially what it does is allows us to process an invoice for $1,000. And the $1,000 came up, if you see at the end of the memorandum there, kind of as a way to equalize to an extent the amount that was requested from each county. Last year, we had received funds from the federal government for the Local Assistance and Travel Consistency Fund in the amount of $100,000. We are simply being asked to allocate the equivalent of 1% of that amount, or $1,000. So it's not coming directly from that particular fund, but that was the metric that the South Dakota Association of Counties used to determine the $1,000 figure. So subject to your questions, that's all I have. And Commissioner Karski, I'm not sure if you wanted to say something since you were there.
If anybody has additional questions, I can probably shed a little more light on it.
All right, thank you.
Public comment. All right, turn it over to Commission for action.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Benega.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Hersky.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, we're going to go back to number 2 from our consent agenda. I'm looking for approval of the commission meeting minutes from October 3rd, 2023. Any comments from the commissioners? Public comment. Please, sir.
Chet Ellsworth, Rapid City.
We need to take that off.
We're on the regular agenda now.
Correct.
Right, okay. I've asked for the number 2 to be taken off of there, the commission minutes from October 3rd, 23. I'll point out before I proceed that on the regular meeting agenda, the consent agenda reads that the regular agenda at the consent agenda can be removed and placed on the regular agenda at the request of the board member. Now, I want to take you back to July 25th, where it included the public too. It doesn't now.
Correct.
Okay. Number 2 was the meeting minutes of October 3rd, which I did some of this last meeting, and 2 of you folks weren't there. On item number 3 of the October 3rd, you were trying to pay election systems and software licensing $31,368. And on item number 12, which was again a bumped consent agenda item, I discussed that those items there in conjunction with the loss of off of the consent agenda of the right of the public to address the consent items. I am asking that you move both of these in conjunction to a special meeting to consider the ramifications of what you've done here, and discuss a constitutional crisis caused thereby. And if I can proceed. At the time on July 25th, when this invoice was made, the invoice was made on July 26th, the one day after the July 25th meeting, of which the removal was proposed on the agenda. And at that time, the folks and your staff had, through the lawsuits against Jessica Paloma and We the People concerning the CVR records, Pennington County had joined with you folks in those lawsuits. And at the time, Pennington County had on their agenda that they allowed citizens to remove part of the consent agenda, of which on that date, your staff put in the record that they were going to add it because it was never on there.
Your time is up.
Your time. This is a regular agenda item.
Yes, sir.
I take a point of order on that.
I already asked for legal counsel. It's a consent agenda item. We did move it to the regular agenda. Please. So it is a regular agenda or consent agenda?
I would first of all say with discretion of the chair, but the second point I raised was that I believe in the past we have imposed a time limit on things moved off the consent calendar to the regular agenda for public comment.
Okay.
So
okay.
we're under the regular agenda now.
So we have a 3-minute limit on your time, sir. So appreciate your comments. Any questions of the commenter, of the input?
No, Mr. Chair, I think we have complete right of controlling our own agenda. We give notice and an opportunity to be heard by all community members. We give an option to comment on any consent agenda item, and I think out of a pure courtesy, we moved it to the regular agenda. You can make your comments at that time or at a time for public comment. I really am having trouble connecting the dots of what you're really getting at. I don't know that, I mean, this is the second time we've done this with our minutes from the prior meeting, which I don't even know is kind of procedurally what you're getting at. So I don't, on the merits of the meeting minutes, I don't see any issues, and I don't really want to entertain some of the other thoughts, so I'll just make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Kipley. And that's what the motion is for, is to approve or amend the minutes.
Point of
that
order.
is our, no,
Point
sir,
of
that
order.
this is not
Standing
your
to make
place.
a point of order, that's
We're
the
in-
five of us up
I'm
here.
gonna ask you to
are-
take your chair.
This
Thank
is
you.
regular, this is a regular business.
We have a
meeting.
motion to approve. I'm looking for a second.
Second?
Motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes from October 3rd. Do I need a roll call vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. We are now at the opportunity for public comment. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Rick Bonander from Valley Springs. I would like to take just a few minutes to thank you for the Planning and Zoning Commission, the State's Attorney's Office, and most importantly, the Minnehaha County Commission. Your intelligence, vision, and leadership to enact an intelligent CO2 ordinance, specifically for setbacks, will allow for the continued development of the Sioux Falls area, Minnehaha County, and all the areas that surround. I want to thank you, the generations ahead of you, thank you, and so I appreciate everything you've done. Thank you with that.
Thank you, Rick. Other public comment?
Good morning, Cindy Meyer. I just want to read something here. Executive Order 13848, imposing certain sanctions in the event of foreign interference in a United States election. President Donald Trump of the United States is stating, I find that the ability of persons located in whole or in substantial part outside the United States to interfere in or undermine public confidence in United States elections, including through the unauthorized accessing of election and campaign infrastructure or the covert distribution of propaganda and disinformation, constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. Although there has been no evidence of a foreign power altering the outcome or vote tabulation in any United States election, foreign powers have historically sought to exploit America's free and open political system. In recent years, the proliferation of digital devices and internet-based communications has created significant vulnerabilities and malaligned the scope and intensity and the threat of foreign interference, as illustrated in the 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment. I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with the threat. This is the executive order signed by our President, Donald Trump, September of 2018. This threat doesn't have to be from foreign powers because the threat is right here in the United States. It's right here in the state of South Dakota. I know you guys are tired of hearing about it because you tell us that you're tired of hearing about our continual appeals for you to put us on the agenda to talk about the elections. I told you when you were canvassing the vote for the 22 election that we had votes that were being dropped, but you didn't ask a question, you just went ahead and certified the election. And so, does anyone know what the crime for certifying a fraudulent election is? Could it be treason? Elections have consequences, and stolen elections have catastrophic consequences. Our South Dakota Canvassing Group has been doing presentations around the state regarding the South Dakota elections. People are appalled to hear the statistics that have been presented. We're doing another one here in South Dakota, in Sioux Falls, Thursday night. It's at the Alliance and starts at 7 o'clock. I emailed a couple of you this announcement. I hope that you can attend. I think you will be shocked at what you hear as well. There is fraud going on in our elections. They are stealing our elections, and it's time for you guys to actually listen to the information that we present. So hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? All right. Commission liaison reports. Please.
Just rapid fire. We, in our consent agenda, in the highway briefing or update, the Colton Road is open, which is significant to some of us who live out that way. So I'm excited to give that a drive and see the work that we've completed there. Also, this past week, last week, I was able to attend the children, let me see, it was the Family Domestic for Shelter Safety event for raising awareness for domestic violence and victims of domestic violence. The Bring Back the, or I'm sorry, the name is slipping my mind at this moment, but it was a very well-attended event held at USF to raise awareness for victims of domestic violence. And also I was able to attend just briefly stop in and visit the Warrant Resolution Court, which had an amazing outcome, I think, compared to the first event. I think the first time we had 7 people that attended and were able to have warrants cleared. We had 32 people go through this past week. 62 warrants were cleared, with some other felony warrants being sent over to the jail to be cleared. So it was overall, I think, a significant improvement from the first go. So I hope to see continued success with that program. That's it for me.
All righty. Thank you, Commissioner. Any other liaison reports? All right. I'll move then to non-action commission discussion. I only have one thing. I just want it to be noticed that the fact that when I chair and meetings last more than 3 hours is not a direct reflection on my ability to manage a meeting. So I appreciate your consideration there. All right. We're not going to have an executive session after this, so I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Second, Commissioner. Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.